Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching second part of What If Broken Naruto was trained by Kyuubi. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
The three genin ventured into the forest the following day. Nobody discussed what had occurred. Sakura was able to stop Sasuke when he tried. The other day, Sakura told Naruto why they were climbing the trees. "Oh man," grumbled Naruto. Sakura gave him a strange look, so Naruto clarified. "My control sucks. I'm alright with my hands and inside my body, but if I have to work with my feet, this is going to really suck," Naruto murmured. Unfortunately, Sasuke smuggled after learning this and laughed when Naruto fell for the first time. Naruto approached Sakura, who was sleeping, after spending a good deal of chakra in vain for about 30 minutes. Naruto said, "Hey, can you give me a tip?" Sakura was thrilled that Naruto came to her when he was struggling, even though he sounded a little anxious. She began by explaining to Naruto the fundamentals of chakra and what it was. A combination of mental and physical strength. She then discussed chakra paths and how to shape them for a jutsu. Lastly, she offered him guidance on how to focus the chakras and clear his mind. Naruto listened to her lessons more intently than he ever did during Iruka's lectures. Naruto remained silent for a while. He took some time to process all of the new information. His thoughts drifted back to his encounters with Kibo and Kito, and the lessons they imparted on chakra control. "Damn," he said, forcing himself to emerge from his recollections. He positioned himself and brought his hands together, saying, "That exercises again." Instead of directing chakra toward any one area of his body, he allowed it to circulate throughout his body. Sasuke and Sakura sensed a change in Naruto, even though they couldn't see it. Sasuke said, "What are you doing?" Naruto was being watched by both of his teammates. "Flow exercises," said Naruto. A series of sweeping left-legged kicks followed 3 right-legged kicks. Low, middle, and high. Naruto launched into a series of alternating sweeping kicks aimed as high as he could kick, saying, "I have an abnormally high amount of chakra, but the downside is that my control is terrible. I overuse chakra, and it's hard for me to direct it fully into one thing. I've looked up dozens of exercises for control, but I've never seen the tree walking one before." Sasuke briefly pondered whether everything necessitated such a trade-off before asking, "So, why aren't you climbing?" He liked to think of Naruto as a simpleton who was unable to make use of his resources. In a moment, Naruto added as he resumed his kicking drills. He went on for a few more seconds before doing a final backflip and landing with his feet together, saying, "Right now I'm doing this to get used to focusing chakra into my feet. Okay, I'm ready now," he said as he dashed straight toward a tree. Naruto began climbing the tree. Sakura and Sasuke observed closely and saw how much Naruto struggled with control. The tree would crack slightly under the force of his steps, or one of his feet would slip a little before sticking to the bark. Before his foot slipped and he began to fall, he had climbed 20 feet. He flipped back down, landing on all fours after making a scratch with his kunai on the tree. Naruto sighed as he assessed his ascent up the tree. He let out a sigh. This is going to be a long day. Not wanting to hurt the tree he had just fallen from anymore, Naruto got up and ran toward a new one. Thus, the day went on. Naruto never used a tree more than twice out of concern that he would seriously harm it, but Sasuke and Sakura kept using the same 2 trees. Sasuke questioned him about why he didn't simply run on the same tree until it became unusable. In response, Naruto simply stated that he didn't want to enrage his third brother. Sasuke was annoyed that he never used their real names since it left him in the dark about who they were. Naruto eventually used up the majority of the nearby trees. He was still slipping on or cracking the bark, but he had gotten better and could climb each tree most of the way. Naruto said, "I'll find a new area, you two stay here for when Kakashi comes back," after he had used up all the trees he could use. Naruto pointed in a direction and said, "I'll go that way until I find another stand of trees that's good." Sakura was nearly awestruck by the boy. Even on her best days, he had used 3 or 4 times as much chakra as she did. He appeared to be just exhausted. Although he appeared to be in roughly the same state, Sasuke was only using a small portion of Naruto's chakra as he improved his control. All they could do was observe Naruto as he moved to a new location to continue his training. As soon as Naruto was out of sight, Sasuke remarked, "Abnormally high amount of chakra, my ass. There's no way he can have that much chakra. It's got to be a trick of some kind." Sasuke was not happy. Naruto would soon be able to outstrip them all thanks to his immense energy and his steady ascent up the trees. "But Sasuke," pleaded Sakura, She didn't want her teammate to get upset with Naruto because she really liked Sasuke. Why don't you believe him? You've seen how bad his control is. Yes, he has a lot of chakra, but that doesn't mean he's a bad person. I don't understand why you're so upset. Sasuke angrily retorted, because he has so much power, and he acts like it's nothing. Sasuke turned and punched a tree, saying, "Power should be used," instead he throws it away. "Please, Sasuke, give him a chance," Sakura pleaded. She let out a deep sigh as she realized, he's still young, we all are, too. We're still growing up. Give him a chance, please. Remember what Kakashi said, we're supposed to be a team, we can't be a team if you're going to fight about Naruto. Sakura was unable to respond, well, we're not supposed to hide things about each other either. Sakura reluctantly began training with Sasuke, who said, I'm going to make him tell us something when he gets back. For now, I'm going to keep training like Kakashi told us to. Although she was relieved that he was temporarily leaving Naruto alone, things were becoming more difficult. In contrast, Naruto was sitting in the center of a field of flowers that he had discovered. Although the boy found meditation difficult, he had to acknowledge that it did aid in his self-control. The unity of mind and body will produce better control than any training, Kito had mentioned when she first gave him meditation lessons. You don't have to train nearly as much as most people do to increase your chakra, so the best thing you can do is work on control. Through meditation and flow exercises with the element styles you will be able to increase your control greatly. It will take time, longer than most because of your ever-changing chakra, but in the end it will be a greater payoff. In order to try to shape all of his power into something inside his head, Naruto was meditating. It appeared to him as a roaring fire that he was attempting to extinguish from a white-hot ember. He had to work with Kito, Kibo, and Kyuubi for a week before he was able to pull it off, and it was still difficult. Naruto's control over the demon half of his chakra had improved since he had obtained the bowl of Kyuubi's essence, but his total chakra was also greater, so he was essentially back where he had been before. Kyuubi shouted abruptly, "It is time for me to train you some more, kid," interrupting Naruto's focus. "Especially if you want to be able to pass my siblings' tests." "What do you want me to do?" Kyuubi stated, "It's actually not that hard," in a tone that Naruto always connected with trouble. "You're going to transform and go through the stances for the element styles, all of the stances. You will also have everything weighted, 4 steps higher than previously. Along with all your senses, human and demon, reaching out to your full extent." The list kept getting longer and longer. "Make that 5 steps, now get to work." Although the tail always stung, Naruto found the transformation to be easier than the last time. He followed Kyuubi's instructions to increase the weight of his clothing while closing his eyes and performing the jutsu. Then he closed his eyes and allowed his senses to reach their maximum capacity. Naruto opened his eyes and was a little taken aback when he felt 2 creatures on the periphery of his spirit awareness that he believed to be Sakura and Sasuke. They had apparently gone back to training. Additionally, he sensed the spirits of every plant and animal within a mile of where he was. He had to control his chakra flow while he began to move through the positions, which was very distracting. Naruto made a lot of mistakes at first because of all the distractions, but he eventually completed all the stances on his 6th attempt. After reprimanding him for failing to mold his chakra as instructed, Kyuubi made Naruto do it once more. In the end, Naruto spent hours upon hours performing the exercises. Naruto sensed another presence on the edge of his spirit sense as the sun was lowering. In order to gain a better sense of who it was, he stopped halfway through a series of punches and blocks. The newcomer went up to what he believed to be Sakura and Sasuke. After a brief conversation, the third began to move toward Naruto, and the other 2 began to leave. The training was about to end. Naruto returned to his human form and began to approach the new individual. Kakashi was beginning to worry. Something had happened, judging by Sakura's and Sasuke's reactions when he brought up Naruto. Kakashi sighed. He didn't think this teaching assignment would be finished anytime soon because it was more difficult than any mission he had ever been on. Naruto was approaching him when he ran into him. He was only slightly taken aback to learn that the boy had already been aware that Kakashi would be picking him up. Together, they walked back. Both remained silent for a while. Kakashi announced, "You have to tell them something," ending the quiet. "Like what?" asked Naruto. "I'm part demon. I'm the container for the strongest demon in a century who's been teaching me jutsu." "Oh. Wait. No, I've got a great one. I'll tell them all about my brothers and sisters." Naruto was staring sidelong at Kakashi. Kakashi noted, "You must have already guessed about them." "I understand that this is not easy, but they're your teammates," Kakashi stated. "Tell them something. They're starting to lose trust in you, Naruto." You need them as much as they need you right now. Just give them something to think about for now. At least something to hold us over until we can get back to Konoha and speak to the Hokage." Naruto breathed a sigh of relief. We walked in relative silence for the remainder of the walk. There was a fair amount of silence as Kakashi read one of his novels and occasionally giggled while Naruto considered what to say to them. Naruto was unsure about what to say to his teammates. He pondered whether he ought to invent something, such as an unidentified lineage. He was ultimately relieved that Kyuubi had subjected him to such a demanding training session that day, since it provided him with a justification to go straight to the table and slouch, resting his head on his hands. As she began to serve the food, Tsunami inquired, "How was your training today?" Inari, her son, was frowning as he watched Naruto. Sakura said, "Good," while pumping her arm. She blushed and turned to face her crush, who merely reached for the food. "I'm feeling a lot stronger, and Sasuke is incredible as always." Tazuna said, "What about you, Naruto? Think you can take on that demon guy again?" Naruto smiled at the idea. "Oh yay, and I won't miss next time," he said. Inari said, "Why do you bother?" The words, "No matter how hard you try, you're no match for Gatu's men," caused him to cry. Inari got up and hammered the table with his hand. "No matter what you say or do, they'll always be stronger than you. If you fight them again, you'll just die." Naruto retorted, "I'm not like you, kid," with contempt. Everyone was shocked by the outburst, but Inari ignored it and kept yelling at Naruto. "I don't want to be like you," he said. "You have no idea who we are or how difficult life can be." After Inari's outburst, the whole room seemed to cool down a few degrees. As Naruto looked up from the table at the boy, everyone's attention was fixed on him. Kakashi knew he should intervene and try to defuse the situation, but he did nothing. Sasuke was even intimidated by his teammate. Sakura watched, trembling, as Naruto's eyes gradually began to change. The blue eyes that so strongly reminded her of the sky on a clear day now only reflected a coldness that was bitterer than any winter she had ever known. "I've been alone for 11 years, Naruto said softly, but everyone could hear the steel in his voice. "Don't you dare speak to me about how hard life can be. No family, no friends, only me." They could only watch in awe as Naruto's eyes changed once more, but this time it was completely different from the moment before. His iris began to slowly shift until his eyes turned blood red, and his expression changed from one of cold to one of burning rage. "I was not only alone, but hated by just about every person I ever met." His voice was filled with rage, but he managed to contain it, if only slightly. "I was never given the opportunity to prove myself. Never displayed anything but contempt and hatred. You have the audacity to talk to me about living a difficult life. Spend all your life being blamed for something that you had nothing to do and could have done nothing about," said Inari, rooted to the spot, who would have fled if he could have. "After that, we can discuss leading a difficult life." Kakashi finally managed to say, "Naruto, that's enough." Naruto glared at Kakashi for a moment before turning away, and when he turned back, his eyes had turned blue again, and the intense feeling he had been exuding had slightly subsided. Before stalking out of the room, Naruto looked back at Inari. Sakura started to get up and follow him, but Tazuna stopped her. He shook his head, and Sakura slowly sat back down. Tsunami was comforting Astil, shaking Inari, who was unsure of how to feel because Naruto's outburst had shaken her too. She wasn't sure whether she should feel more sympathy for Inari, who had absorbed the full force of the red-eyed rage, or Naruto, who had endured such a difficult life. "Is it accurate?" Tsunami looked straight at Kakashi as she asked. With a sigh, the Junin looked down and said, "Every word." No one felt like eating anymore, and the realization seemed to give Naruto a completely different perspective. He has spent his life all alone. He pondered absently why Naruto had said that for 11 years. Had the boy found someone he could trust 2 years ago? Even when Kakashi had told them that Naruto had had a difficult life, Sakura had never guessed the truth was so extreme, and she could not believe that Naruto had all that anger bottled up inside of him. He was no longer angry or upset, and if anything, he felt sympathy for Naruto because both of their lives were difficult. Sasuke wondered what Naruto had been talking about and what the people could have blamed him for. After a few minutes, Tazuna said, "He's stronger than I ever gave him credit for," and the others could only nod in agreement. They had a lot to discuss after cleaning up the uneaten food, so Sakura and Sasuke went out to find Naruto. They eventually found him lying on the roof, gazing up at the stars. Naruto remained silent as they positioned themselves on either side of him, with Sakura on his right, cradling her knees against her chest while gazing up at the sky, and Sasuke sitting on the roof's peak and leaning back against the chimney. The silence was broken by Naruto, who said, I guess you two deserve to know what's going on. They were shocked to hear Sasuke say, "No, we shouldn't be pressuring you," he said. "Just let us know when you're ready." Sakura nodded and smiled at Naruto as he turned to face her. Feeling more at ease than he had in days, Naruto closed his eyes and leaned back. "Thanks guys," he said, looking at Sakura and Sasuke before raising his right hand in the air and forming a fist. Team 7? Both Sakura and Sasuke extended their arms and pressed their fists against Naruto's. Kakashi grinned as he watched them from the branches of a tree. Team 7, they chanted, and they knew that they had overcome a significant obstacle and had become a closer team as a result. They had the potential to become great on their own, but together, it wasn't potential, it was fact. It was good that they had put aside their differences because they would all be needed to protect Tazuna tomorrow. According to his estimations, Zabuza would be well enough to return, and Kakashi didn't think he would come alone. Kakashi went back inside the house and assured Tazuna and Tsunami that everything would be fine. Meanwhile, the three genin sat on the roof and talked about nothing specific. When they returned, Kakashi explained the plan, and they all agreed that it was time. Finally, Naruto felt the full strain of his training as he nearly fell into the bed. Kakashi looked at him and saw that he was exhausted, and he told Sakura and Sasuke that he had been drained and would need an additional day to recover, though he was unsure of how long it would take to replenish such a huge reservoir of chakra. Sakura and Sasuke agreed, stating that they had noticed how exhausted he had appeared during their conversation. Sakura and Sasuke left for the bridge with Kakashi and Tazuna the following day, leaving Naruto to sleep while Tsunami took care of Inari. Then Naruto woke up when he heard a scream of Tsunami's screama and he jumped out of bed, without even stopping to dress, and ran downstairs to see Inari running at two big men brandishing swords. The men reached for their swords, only to have them stop mid-draw because two clones of Naruto had appeared and were blocking the handles of their swords, making it impossible for them to attack the boy as he screamed for them to leave his mother alone. The weak are only attacked by cowards. Before the real Naruto whirled down through the air and kicked each of the two men in the head, knocking them out, this was the last sound they heard. You see that true strength comes from the desire to protect others, and prove yourself. Naruto said, "Good job, Inari," as his clones pulled the swordsman away and bound them up. "Right, now I've got to go," Inari nodded, finally realizing how strong Naruto had grown. Naruto hurried up to his room, putting on his clothes without using the weight jutsu because he needed all the speed he could get. "I'm betting that my friends are under attack as well." As he approached the bridge, he activated his demon eyes, levels 1 and 2, and his spirit senses, sensing that a battle had already begun, with Kakashi fighting Zabuza and Sasuke fighting a new person, Sakura still protecting Tazuna. Naruto arrived just in time to witness the new person activating an unidentified seal and ice beginning to form around Sasuke in the form of numerous ice mirrors, which reminded him of the mirrors Shibi had created to organize the Council of Demons. But these mirrors seemed to be composed of ice rather than water. As Naruto slowly emerged from the fog that Zabuza had conjured with his jutsu, Kakashi remarked, "You shouldn't underestimate us, Zabuza." Sasuke was the top rookie student in his class, Sakura is the smartest and most controlled, and Naruto, well, you remember Naruto. As Naruto got closer, Haku, the nin helping Zabuza, stepped into the mirrors. Naruto walked slowly around the mirrors, examining them, seemingly unconcerned with the masked ninja who had made them. The voice was equally androgynous, and he was unable to determine if the person was male or female. Based on her aura, he assumed it was a girl, but he wasn't positive. Naruto remarked, "I have a sister that can do something like this," as Kyuubi began to provide him with information about potential usefulness in this circumstance. "Impossible," the masked ninja informed Naruto. "This is the manipulation of ice, my bloodline limit. I am my clan's last member. Your sister can't possibly do this," Naruto said, but based on her aura, he could tell she was intrigued. "Haku, get serious, finish them, and don't underestimate the short one," Zabuza screamed. "Give me a minute, please," Naruto said, turning to face Sasuke. "I want to talk to my teammate before you fight." After saying, "Make your final words short," Haku opened her mirrors to let Naruto pass. Naruto approached Sasuke and lowered his voice to allow them to speak, saying, "I doubt they will be our final words, but have it your way. Think you can take her?" Sasuke didn't think Naruto would be able to make it, so he took a moment to study him before answering. Sasuke, who clearly thought it was a guy, hesitated just a little before using the pronoun. "If I could activate my Sharingan then this would be easier," he said, trusting Naruto had a plan. "But because Thisa person has a bloodline limit it may not be easy even if I could." Sasuke accepted Naruto's hand and they exchanged glances. Okay, Naruto said, but focusing chakra on your eyes will only get you halfway. Additionally, you must want to see how to combat her. Trust me. Don't ask how I know. Naruto tightened his hold on Sasuke's hand and said, just one more thing. His eyes widened as he guessed what Naruto was going to do. You're sitting this one out. Naruto spun while still holding Sasuke's hand, lifted the other boy off his feet, and threw Sasuke out between the gaps in the mirrors before even Haku could react. You did that, but why? You have only allowed him to live a little longer than you, Haku said, and then she launched her attack. Using a Senbon needle, Haku attacked Naruto, moving so quickly that it was almost impossible to tell where she was coming from due to the other reflections of her. After the initial round of attacks, Naruto was left in the center of the room with multiple needles sticking through his jacket, which had prevented him from being slashed, but he had cuts along his face and was having trouble moving because of the needle placement. I did it, Naruto said, defending himself with a kunai in his left hand as he reached around to extract needles from his legs, shoulder, and other easily accessible places. Because he's the last of his clan. Naruto straightened up, his wounds partially healed, and turned to face the mirror that contained the real Haku. The first level of the demon eyes revealed the location of the true attacker, while also revealing that the news that Naruto could outlast her had confused and alarmed her. The second level of the demon eyes revealed that Haku's chakra was being depleted in order to maintain the mirrors, and based on Naruto's and Kyuubi's estimations, she could only keep it up for a few minutes. Before last night, they had been on the verge of becoming enemies, but Naruto had just placed himself in Sasuke's position, right in the middle of an enemy's attack, and Sasuke had to have faith that Naruto knew what he was doing. He formed the tiger seal and began to focus chakra into his eyes, but he wasn't sure if Naruto could actually withstand the attacks long enough for him to activate his eyes. Haku was now attacking constantly, piercing Senbon through Naruto's jacket. Since a slashing strike from the light needles would only cause light impact damage due to the metal mesh between the layers, the masked nin was forced to rely on piercing attacks, which are more difficult to execute on a moving target. Since Naruto was not staying still, Haku began to launch herself out of her mirrors, using the reflections to greatly increase her speed, so that she could stab the needles into Naruto rather than throw them. Her attacks were swift and unrelenting, aiming for Naruto's vital spots. Only Naruto's amazing healing prevented him from falling victim to the attacks, and when he saw that the girl was moving too quickly for him to block her attacks, he dropped the kunai and concentrated only on removing the needles from his body, leaving the bloody weapons all over Naruto's surroundings. His pants were in the same state, and he was trying to see how the boy attacked, but it wasn't enough. Sasuke was growing more desperate, and even he could see that Naruto was beginning to wear down from the attacks. His orange jacket's outer layer was in ruins, exposing a layer of metal mesh with the senbon stuck through it. What makes you fight? After removing needles from his sides and back, Naruto said, you don't want to kill me, I can see that. The attacks abruptly stopped, and he said, you could be doing so much more. Naruto kept removing the senbon from his body until he was able to drop to his knees. His energy was being depleted by his constant need for healing, but he had not yet drawn on Kyuubi's chakra, which would be his ace if he needed it. The masked nin began to flash from mirror to mirror, picking up the senbon that Naruto had pulled from his body, preparing for a final attack. I am the weapon of Zabuza, Haku said. That is what ninja with advanced bloodlines were for, to be used as the weapons of shinobi nations. I was not lying when I said that I did not want to kill you. In truth, I am too kind to be a shinobi. However, I can kill my heart and kill you for Zabuza. Haku had completed getting the needles and was prepared to strike. Sasuke was beginning to notice the boy's movements and speed, and he could feel and see how he moved. At that moment, he realized that Haku was planning a last attack, and that Naruto was too exhausted to move in time, not even to lessen the blow. Sasuke began to run, knowing that he had only a moment before Naruto got it, that the only person he had ever met who could relate to him was going to be hit. He had to make it. In an attempt to block the attack, Naruto raised his arms and closed his eyes. He attempted to channel Kyuubi's chakra, but he was unable to do so in time, and he only hoped that the attack wouldn't be fatal. When the attack failed, however, he opened his eyes, wondering why the girl hadn't killed him, and what he saw was worse than he could have imagined. Sasuke stood in front of him, with senbon needles stuck all over his body, while Haku lay on the ground a few feet away, his two-tier Sharingan faltered and faded as he fell back into Naruto's arms. Why? Naruto asked, as he lay his teammate down. Sasuke didn't have Naruto's healing ability, so he couldn't safely remove the senbon. I didn't ask you to save me. Though Naruto was unaware of it, Sasuke had managed to move in such a way that none of the needles struck vital organs or blood vessels, and he had only passed out due to the sudden intense pain and effort in activating his own bloodline limit. "I don't know," Sasuke said, coughing up blood in response. "My body just moved on its own." Sasuke closed his eyes and his head fell to the side. Sasuke appeared to be dead. "He died to protect you," Haku remarked admiringly as she began to stand up. "He struck me down with one final blow." To him, "You must have been very valuable. I'm sorry you had to witness his passing. But don't worry, you will soon join him." The masked nin turned to attack Naruto once more, but she was shocked to see that red chakra was burning all around him and began tearing up the bridge's stone as it spiraled out from him. Naruto was driven to the brink by the grief of Sasuke's apparent death, but to his astonishment, he felt more in control of his power than ever before. It seemed that by absorbing the great demon fox's essence, he was able to maintain control over his power instead of giving in to the anger he typically associated with releasing Kyuubi's chakra, which caused his feelings to focus like a laser and his control to increase exponentially. Naruto began the hand seals. Kaden. Ryuza Hain Hidofuki no Jutsu, Fire type. Dragon Wing Gust Technique. The great wings formed on Naruto's back, and as he flapped them, massive waves of intense heat hit the mirrors. Haku's attempts to contain the force of Naruto's chakra and keep the mirrors intact, combined with the fact that she had been using her bloodline limit for a long time, caused the mirrors that Naruto was aiming at to begin to melt and break, one by one, until they vanished and the water evaporated, making them unreformable. "All of my mirrors were destroyed by one technique." Haku was stunned and said, "Who are you?" She was terrified. This boy had easily broken her mirrors, something that not even Zabuza could do. She was left in the final mirror, facing Naruto as he approached her. "I am Uzumaki Naruto," he said with composure, "and you are very lucky." Naruto's new focus and control enabled him to activate all of his demon senses without any outward appearances, so he could tell that Sasuke's aura, though diminished, had not vanished. "He's still alive, and you won't die." Haku was using all of her chakra to prevent the mirror she was in from breaking, and even now there were tiny cracks forming at the edges. "Why? I intended to murder you, and him," Haku said, pulling herself from her mirror and falling back out before it broke. "You should kill me, that is the shinobi way," she said as she got to her feet, reaching up to remove the mask. Naruto remarked, "That may be," as the fog began to clear around them, "but it is not my way. After Kakashi and Zabuza have finished fighting, your fate will be determined, but you won't perish." As he prepared his final attack, Kakashi appeared to have a lightning bolt in his right hand, radiating sparks and energy all around him. "No," Haku said, trying to run and get between her teacher and the deadly attack, but she was unable to do so because Naruto had a vice-like grip on her arm. She struggled, but Naruto held her. "Let me go. I must save him." "No, his time is at an end," Naruto said with a strange composure, "but there are others." Naruto mentioned the 100 or so spirits he could feel beyond the fog that was falling, and he noticed that they were malevolent, with a number of insane members. He heard the sound of thousands of birds, the sickening sound of blood spilling, and the sound of a body falling to the ground. When his aura waned and the spirit slowly left his body, he realized it was too late for Zabuza, and he finally let go of the girl's hand. After running to Zabuza, Haku lifted his head and held it in her lap. With tears in her eyes, she apologized, saying, "Your weapon has failed you, sir. I failed you." The demon Zabuza, one of the 7 swordsmen of Mist, whispered, "No," through the bandages covering his face, "live free, be your own weapon, live your own life." Using his remaining strength, he pulled the handle of his enormous sword in Haku's direction until she finally took it from him. "Take my sword to find the next sword man." While this was going on, Naruto was kneeling over Sasuke, extracting the needles from his body. Sakura hurried to where she had last seen Sasuke, and Tazuna followed, since he was still unsure and she was a better guard than nothing. They were shocked to see Naruto, whose clothes were torn from the fight, leaning over a needle. Pricked Sasuke. As he began to wake up, Naruto said, "He's all right, just unconscious," and without asking how he knew they were there, Sakura went over and knelt down, taking a roll of bandages from her pouch. Since she had received more training in first aid, Naruto got up and removed his jacket, folding it up and placing it beneath Sasuke's head. He said to his injured friend, "You just rest, Sasuke," and Sasuke nodded before falling asleep once more, confident that he would get better. Everyone's gaze shifted to the group Naruto had sensed earlier, which was full of samurai, missing nin, and other bandits, all of whom were carrying a variety of weapons, as a male voice cackled with laughter. The man, who was wearing a black suit and had a cast on his left arm, said, "I see that Zabuza failed me, but it didn't matter. In any case, I was going to murder him. It is very costly to hire a village ninja. Hiring Miss Nin like him is much simpler." He approached where Haku was still holding Zabuza's head and said, "You're the girl. You broke my arm last time I saw you." He raised his cane to strike her, but was stopped before he could do so. He turned to see Naruto behind him, holding the end of the cane, and in a single motion, Naruto had yanked the cane out of his hand and flung it off the side of the bridge. "Oops," Naruto said with a smile, stepping around the man who was kneeling beside Haku. "Come on," he said, but Gato wasn't done. He hobbled away but didn't make much progress. "I don't care what you have to do," he shouted to the missing nin behind him. "Kill them all and bring me their heads." The missing nin saw him halt, and a slow expression of shock spread across his face before he began to fall. 2 senbon needles pierced the back of his head. The missing nin didn't take that well, and they all charged, furious that the person who was supposed to pay them had been killed. They didn't go very far before they came across a dozen Naruto clones, each in a different fighting position. They were about to attack when armed villagers emerged from the lingering fog, ready for a battle. Kakashi thought that was nearly enough, but he was there to tip the scales. A swift jutsu later, and there were dozens of Kakashi clones looking ready to fight. It was too much for the missing nin to handle, so they turned and fled. Ultimately, Sakura assisted Sasuke in walking back to Tazuna's house. Naruto led Haku back, and Haku carried Zabuza's enormous sword while the villagers, acting on Tazuna's orders, carried Zabuza's body back to be buried. After a few days, Zabuza was laid to rest. Sasuke was well enough to return home, and the bridge was completed. The workers who had fled in terror had all returned and worked tirelessly, energized by Gatu's passing, and they completed the bridge in record time. Although it was really unnecessary, Kakashi had spent the time guarding the bridge, and Haku came out of her shell when she learned on the second day that Zabuza had died, releasing her. She became friends with Naruto and the others, and while Sasuke was recuperating, she and Naruto would spar together. The fights were practice, so neither of them went all out, and they usually stopped before a clear winner was determined. When it came time to leave, Haku was still unsure of her plans because the sword was too large for her to wield. Haku explained to Naruto that the changing sword's ability would change to fit them when the next swordsman was located, and Naruto tried his best to persuade her to accompany them back to Leaf. Kakashi appeared uninterested and shrugged when Naruto suggested that she come, instead giggling at a passage in his book before turning the page. Sasuke, who was still a little suspicious of the girl who had beaten him, remained cold towards her and did his best not to acknowledge her. Naruto was disappointed, but he understood and said that if she ever came to Leaf, she should find him so they could spar. Haku ultimately decided that it would be best for her to return to Mist with the sword so that its successor could be found. She readily agreed. When Naruto told Inari to become strong and a role model for the others, Inari took it the hardest, calling him brother, and nearly crying. Naruto said he would come visit when he had enough time off. As they were leaving, Tazuna suggested a name for the bridge they had constructed, the Great Naruto Bridge, in honor of the boy who had given the villagers courage and a chance at a future. The villagers accepted Tazuna's suggestion. The journey home went smoothly. Naruto trained by climbing trees by the side of the road and jumping from one to the next, using his chakra to stay on the next tree. After a while, the other genin joined in, and they raced from point to point. However, Kakashi was always there, reading his book, long before they reached the finish line. Kakashi informed them that they had 4 days off because of the mission at the gates to Konoha. Kakashi then went to the Hokage to give the mission report and decide what to do with Naruto and his growing abilities. Sasuke left, claiming he had training to do, while Sakura was eager to see her parents. Naruto grinned to himself as he left through the shopping district, stopping to talk to a friend about clothes. Wonderland Clothing was having a slow day. Kito was sitting at the front counter reading a book when the doorbell rang. She looked up from her book to see Naruto wearing blue jeans and a white shirt, with a heavy-looking bag on his back that had a small piece of ripped orange fabric sticking out. She didn't say anything as Naruto approached her and placed the bag on the counter, opened it, and took out his ripped and ruined jacket. She gave him a critical look, but he just shrugged as he gave her his foxy grin. She nearly laughed as she turned to call her husband from the back room. When Kibo arrived at the storefront, he saw Naruto and smiled at the boy until he noticed the ruined jacket on the counter. He gave Naruto a frustrated look, but again, Naruto just shrugged and smiled. Kibo shook his head and approached Naruto, ruffling his hair with one hand. They were family, and their body language spoke louder than words. As he examined the jacket's damage, he said, How about a whole new look? I was looking over your old sketches, and got some ideas. Drawing from his sketchbook, Naruto said, "You're not the only one," as he traveled to and from Wave. After approaching the door, Kito turned the sign to closed. It was nice to see Naruto again, and she said, "I'll get the tea," as her husband and the boy entered the back room. On the first day, they reviewed both the new and old sketches, eventually combining the elements that each of them liked to create a new look for Naruto. On the second day, they fitted Naruto, located the materials they needed, and refined the look. On the third day, Kibo made the clothes, and on the fourth day, Kito and Naruto worked on the armor, which was finished. Kibo and Kito waited tensely for Naruto's report as he carried the bundle of clothes into the dressing room. As Naruto emerged from the dressing room, he was wearing a slightly loose long-sleeved white shirt and dark gray pants with multiple buckles and ties to quickly transition from loose casual wear to tight-fitting training or fighting gear. The pants and jacket shared the same triple-layer design, but they were lighter and thinner without significantly reducing their protective capacity. Additionally, there was a belt with a few pouches attached to the rings along its side, but the option to add more. Then Naruto began to change for the armor, which they had decided should take a backseat to the clothes. Naruto reached up and grabbed his sleeves, pulling them off, which were easily attached or detached due to a number of clever knots tied by Kibo. Naruto also reached for a few strings on the sides of the shirt's torso, pulling them until the shirt became skin-tight and would stay that way until he released them. Reaching down, Naruto picked up the largest piece of armor, which was made of specially treated metal that appeared as a slight off-white color that did not shine at all. The white armor covered the majority of Naruto's stomach and stretched across his entire back, with shoulder guards. He slipped his head and right arm through their respective holes and then swiftly buckled it along the left side. Subsequently, he picked up the gloves and forearms, which were both dark gray and fingerless. Each glove had a piece of white metal on the back, and they were easy to put on and stretched over Naruto's hands. He then put on the forearm protectors, which were made of the same treated metal but had a red design carved into them. The two fox heads that Naruto had placed on his original leather forearm protectors so many years ago. A kunai holster was easily attached to a few clips on the side of his right pant leg, and Naruto reached down and tightened his pants down along his legs, snapping on the shin protectors as he had the forearm protectors. He then put on a pair of black and white shoes with metal bands over the toe and halfway up his foot, which protected his feet and significantly strengthened his kick. He turned to Kibo and Kito and nodded to them, checking his entire range of motion in the mirror before saying, "This would be good, it would be very good indeed." With practice, he was able to go from street clothes to battle ready in a very short amount of time. Kito said, "All right my boy," cracking her knuckles, "time to see if you've been practicing." Naruto nodded and followed her out the back of the building. Compared to the previous sparring sessions, this one went much better for Naruto. Neither of them used any jutsu, instead sticking to the element styles. His speed and control had significantly improved, and his strength had also increased, putting him on an even playing field with Kito, who was marginally slower and weaker than him. When Kito delivered a burning fire punch to his cheek and Naruto used an open palm earth strike to his chest, the battle came to a halt, and they both skidded away from one another. Kito winding from Naruto's punch while he was still lightheaded from hers. The comment, "Very impressive, Naruto," came from Kibo's sidelines. "Yes indeed, little brother." A small man, who appeared to be in his late 30s, emerged from a shadow by the wall. He was dressed in unremarkable brown clothing, had big hands and strong-looking arms, had short brown hair, a pinched face, and small eyes that were hidden behind black sunglasses. Naruto looked at the intruder, and although the voice sounded familiar, he was unable to identify it. His vision gradually improved, and he squinted at the face, before it dawned on him. "What are you doing here, second brother?" Astonished by Nibi's unexpected appearance in his human form, Naruto blurted out. Kito and Kibo relaxed a little, assuming that the man was okay if Naruto knew him. Naruto had told them about his previous mission, but they understood when he said that he couldn't tell them everything. "Good to be recognized," said the two-tailed mole demon in human disguise, grinning broadly as he turned and bowed to Kibo and Kito. "I thank you for all you have done for my little brother, but if you will spare us a moment we have something to talk about." The husband and wife exchanged glances before turning to face Naruto, who nodded that everything was fine and they left to wait for him inside. "I'm glad to see you, second brother, but tell me why you're here." He gestured for him to take a seat in one of the available chairs, and they sat facing each other as Naruto asked. Second brother started, "We each give out tests in our own ways," and Naruto found himself listening intently to what the being in front of him was saying. One of my abilities is to find what is hidden, and this is indeed an important part of everyone's life, Naruto said. I am giving you my test because of this. Look for our first brother. My blessing will be given to you once you have. Can you locate him? However, he could be anywhere, Naruto said in shock. How should I begin at all? However, Nibi merely shook his head and grinned. I apologize, little brother, but you will have to find out about that. I wish you luck. The man vanished in a swirl of purple chakra, and the faint smell of wet earth lingered for a moment before dissipating. Naruto turned slowly and wandered back into the store's back room, where Kibo and Kido were waiting. Slowly, Kido said, Naruto, who was that? Naruto grinned at the two of them after shaking himself out of his reverie. They ate lunch together before Naruto had to go home and get ready for his team meeting the following day. He's family, he said, taking off his armor and loosening his clothes. To save space, he placed the forearm protectors in the shin protectors and then both of them into the torso armor, putting them in a bag that would fit easily into his backpack and still leaving some room. Kibo ruffled his hair once more and made him promise to come by once a week for dinner no matter what. Naruto wholeheartedly agreed before he left for home, and his mind returned to what Nibi had told him his task was. How was he supposed to find Ichibi, his first brother? Kido gave him a hug and a new scroll for him to read when he got home. As Naruto turned a corner, he heard a boy shout, and a short distance down the path, a little boy wearing a long scarf was being held up by a teenager wearing black, strange face paint, and a wrapped-up package on his back. A girl wearing pink, with a big folded fan strapped to her back, was behind him. Let him go, Naruto said, or something bad may happen to you. He pointed out that they had the hidden sand hourglass mark on their forehead protectors, which were different from his own. A clone formed behind his back, and Naruto used a Kaorimi no Jutsu, body switch technique, to switch the places of the boy and the clone. Huh, this kid ran into me, said the person in black. It hurt. He began to pull back a fist to punch the boy with the unusually long scarf. The clone grabbed the boy's wrist and began to flip backwards before the painted-faced boy could react, and as the clone vanished, a metal-toed sneaker struck his chin hard and sent him flying back. The girl had taken a defensive stance, expecting the fight to continue, her hands on the huge fan, ready to swing it into position. The boy in black stood and brought the wrapped bundle from behind him. Glaring at Naruto, he grabbed the bandages and began to unwrap it, but was stopped by a voice. I did warn you, Naruto said, grinning a little as the boy picked himself up from some trash. As Naruto heard the voice from a tree, Kankuro, he turned to see another boy standing upside down on a branch, wearing black, with a large gourd on his back and a sash across his front. His hair was cropped short, and he had a tattoo over his left eye and black-rimmed eyes. Stop that, you're an embarrassment. This new boy seemed to frighten him and the other girl. Gagara, the black-clad ninja stammered, his strength gone, and he was trembling a little as he placed the wrapped object back on his back. Wondering what was going on, Naruto activated his demon eyes to level 1 only, mastering it to the point where it resembled his normal eyes. It wasn't Maya that kid started it, he said, pointing at Naruto. Gaara shouted, shut up, before leaping from the branch and landing effortlessly between the two foreign ninja. Or I will kill you. The boy in black and the girl were not just scared, they were terrified, according to what Naruto saw with his aura vision. He looked at the boy next and was shocked by what he saw. He was in great distress, and although the glimmer of madness swirled around him, it appeared that he was still alive. The other thing that he saw really made him uneasy. His aura had demon characteristics, similar to those of the other great demons he had seen at the meeting. Naruto said, you, pointing to the red-haired boy who had so terrified the other two. Who are you and why are you in Konoha? He looked at Naruto and said, Gaara of the desert, in a neutral voice, with his arms folded in front of him. We're here for the Chunin exam. Naruto nodded. He had previously heard Kido explain the Chunin exam, which was a set of tests used to decide who would advance from Genin to Chunin, the next rung in the ninja hierarchy. Since it was open to ninja from all countries, it was likely that many foreign ninja would be entering Konoha. Naruto had no idea what Kakashi was planning for the Chunin exam, but he was going to make sure to bring it up the next time he saw him. I expect I'll see you there, he said, grinning, as the red-haired boy turned and left. Naruto let go of the demon eyes, but he continued to watch them until they had turned the next corner. Naruto was a little uneasy when he looked down at the boy he had saved and noticed that he was no longer Afreda. In fact, he had the blonde ninja's bright eyes of admiration. Wow, the young person exclaimed abruptly, making Naruto leap back. That was really fantastic. You were amazing, and he was huge and intimidating. I'm Konohamaru, he said loudly and rapidly, and he went on. The boy took a step forward for each step Naruto took back, maintaining the same distance between them. Naruto was relieved when Sasuke arrived and unintentionally saved him from the boy's tirade. From the top of a tree, he said, Naruto, Kakashi wanted us all to gather at the training grounds. Come on. He left Naruto to catch up and proceeded to the training area. Without wasting any time, Naruto vanished, and left the Hokage's grandson with a new idol before catching up to Sasuke and continuing their journey together. Sakura was already there when they arrived, and since Kakashi had not yet shown up, they waited as usual. Sasuke brooded, and Sakura fawned over him, while Naruto sat down to meditate. Kyuubi had been acting strangely ever since the Nibi spoke to him, and in his mind, Naruto emerged from the shadows and created a cozy chair for him to sit in. What's going on, Kyuubi? Naruto inquired. Naruto sighed and snapped his fingers, sending a mental command to the area on the other side of the seal. Kyuubi rumbled to himself. Second brother knows something, he seemed to be saying to himself. Why you waited till now to give you this task? Kyuubi continued to mumble too low for Naruto to hear. The reaction took a moment, but the effects were explosive from there. It had taken Kyuubi a moment to realize that he was no longer the great demon fox, lord of volcanoes, and the strongest of all the great demons. Instead, he was Kyuubi, the great stuffed fox, lord of the girls' room, and the cutest of all the plushies. His expression was one of utter horror, and he screamed in horror at the change in his surroundings. He was no longer in a vast, empty lava field, but rather in a girl's room, a pink girl's room surrounded by all sorts of cute. The change was only temporary, but it left the great demon trembling even after his normal surroundings had been restored. In contrast, Naruto was laughing so hard that he nearly fell out of his chair. He had been wanting to do that for a long time, ever since he was able to alter the appearance of objects outside the seal, and he had only intended to attract Kyuubi's attention, but the response he received was far more favorable. After regaining his composure, Kyuubi snarled, "Never do that again," and pretended for a moment, smoothing down his ruffled fur. Naruto nearly burst out laughing again, but he restrained himself, and Kyuubi resumed his speech. My second brother, Nibi, may not be our strongest, but he is one of our smartest. There's a reason he assigned you that task earlier today. In the real world, Naruto was considering what Kyuubi had said when he felt a hand shake his shoulder. I assume Ichibi is somewhere in this pathetic village. Naruto said, we'll talk about this later, before vanishing and going back to the real world. When he noticed that Naruto had woken up, Kakashi began, alright, sorry it took me so long, I was picking these up. He took 3 pieces of paper out of a pocket and said, these are your nominations for the Chunin exam. Naruto grinned broadly, and even Sasuke gave a small smirk. Naruto turned to see Sakura looking conflicted. Don't worry Sakura, he said, smiling amiably at her. We can handle anything they throw at us, but if we approach this as a team, we'll be stronger and have a better chance. Additionally, we've all improved significantly. Sasuke nodded in agreement as she smiled at him. Kakashi grinned at them. They had grown closer as a team. He produced a pen from a pocket and held it out to them, where Sasuke signed his name first, followed by Naruto and Sakura. He then took them back and placed them in a pocket before giving them his parting instructions. Be prepared for everything on the test by studying today, getting some rest tomorrow, and starting the exam in 2 days. He vanished, relieved that he didn't have to worry about the 3 of them signing up together. Remember, you are a team. Yes. There are going to be some tough opponents, Naruto said, punching the air. I'm eager. Sasuke began working out at the training fields. Sakura was running up and down trees to improve her speed and stamina, and Naruto began running, heading home. I'll see you guys in 2 days. When Naruto returned to his apartment, he sank into a deep meditation, sitting in the center of the room and creating a dojo. Like seen on his side as he emerged from the shadows of his mind. All right, Kyuubi said, prepared to practice control and jutsu. I was just taking a quick look back at that boy with the weird aura. I'm pretty certain now. The demon took up residence on the opposite side of the seal and said, but that is not important right now. He was getting that aura from my first brother. Confront him at the test, where you will be. We're working on control right now, and I'll give you some more jutsu. They began with control. Naruto bowed to his demon teacher and said, alright sensei, let's begin. He emerged from his trance and performed his flow exercises, going through each stance of the element styles while Kyuubi gave him a lecture about the new attacks he was giving him. Under the dubious name of Ararugibakuden, Allergy Bomb, the first attack was a lethal disabling attack that required Naruto to create a specific toxin in his body that would cause an allergic reaction in the target. These reactions varied, but they were all disabling in some way, whether it was a terrible itching rash, constricted breathing, watering eyes, or sneezing, and few would be able to fight for very long after being exposed to the gas. With practice, Naruto would be able to administer the toxin through physical contact or exhale it as a gas, and he would be immune to it should it be used on him or if it goes wrong. The next attack, known as the Kitsune Otake, Fox Roar, was a technique that greatly amplified the user's voice as they roared out. It had multiple uses, including triggering what Kyuubi called a flee reaction, making anyone it was directed at feel terrified and causing them to flee, and calling for assistance in the form of any foxes that heard it, who might come to investigate if Naruto ever used it. The final attack, known as High Note Inju, Fire Ribbons, was a fire attack that enabled him to shoot fire whips from his hands up to 20 feet away. It required a burst of chakra to light them, but not much to keep them burning. Since Naruto had never trained with whips, he would not be proficient with them without practice, but it might be a useful trick to surprise an opponent. The following day, Naruto would train the physical part of the moves in the forest. Naruto spent the rest of the night practicing the hand seals for each of the moves, though he never cast them. When Naruto arrived at his usual clearing in the morning, he discovered that it was in use and recognized the three people as members of his class: Akiba, Shino, and Hinata. Akamaru, Kiba's dog, was sitting on the boy's head, sniffing the air before looking up to see Naruto and barking. The three genin turned, but only Kiba glanced up at the tree where Naruto was. Kiba shouted, "Hey," with an angry tone, "You were spying on us?" Shaking his head, Naruto leapt from the tree. No, Naruto reassured him, "I just came here to practice for the Chunin exam tomorrow." He leapt in their direction, misjudging the amount of power he required, and landed mere inches ahead of Kiba, who reacted swiftly and pretended that he had intended to ask, "What are you doing here?" His dog used the occasion to sniff Naruto's scent and determine his level of strength. Kiba took a step back, shocked by how easily Naruto had leapt through the air at him, but he pulled himself together and turned to face Naruto. Kiba said, "We've been studying here for the Chunin test for a week. Where have you been, anyhow?" At the question, Naruto simply smiled. He gave one gloved hand a slow fist before letting go, the material extending over his hand. "I've had a mission for a while, just got back a few days ago and I've been busy with stuff," he said. Hinata was watching Naruto, who had decided not to wear sleeves that day due to the heat, and she couldn't help but blush when she saw his toned arms. Shino saw her reaction but remained silent. Kiba stopped Naruto as he turned to jump back into the trees. "Well," Naruto went on, "I suppose I should find a new place to train." Kiba said, "Hey," extending his arms slightly, "how about a friendly spar?" Kiba laughed, not anticipating Naruto's response. "No," Naruto said with a small laugh, "I don't want to hurt you before the exam tomorrow." Kiba was going to respond, but he was too slow, and Naruto was already leaping through the trees to get to another location. After Naruto, Kiba shook his fist and said, "Gah, I could have taken him. Isn't it true, Akamaru, that he wouldn't have any chance?" Akamaru whimpered and buried his nose in the boy's hair, disappointing Kiba, who was certain that his dog partner would concur. Kiba scowled and turned to face the direction where Naruto had vanished. "Kiba, is something amiss?" When Hinata was with people she knew, her stutter wasn't as bad, so she asked. Hinata and Shino nodded, knowing that he had been practicing. "Akamaru can sense someone's strength by their smell," he said, adding that Naruto has become much stronger and that his chakra has a peculiar quality. Consider how much Sasuke has changed if Naruto has become good enough to terrify Akamaru. It appears that this will not be as simple as we had anticipated. Shino was unaffected by this information, but Hinata became concerned. Hinata wondered if this was what her father had meant when he asked where Naruto had disappeared. Did he know how much Naruto had changed since they all turned genin? There seemed to be more questions than answers about Naruto, but she had to admit that he was adorable, and his smile made her heart skip a beat. In Hinata's mind, the questions were becoming less significant than the boy they were worried about. For a while, Kiba raged and screamed about how rude Naruto had been, but he stopped when he saw that no one was paying attention. Even his dog had begun to nap in the shade. They eventually returned to their original purpose for being outside and began training, but the pale-eyed girl's mind continued to think about the blonde. Although Naruto was unable to locate another clearing, he did discover a waterfall that flowed into a pond that was covered in big rocks that protruded above the water's surface. The largest, a boulder in the center of the pond, was where he leapt out. The words, "Try something new," Kyuubi said. The demon said, Testing a theory. So just shut up and do it. Naruto sighed and attempted the technique. Extend your aura as you would for your chakra. He had never attempted to control his aura before, so it was challenging at first, but Kyuubi forced him to keep going while giving him instructions all along the way. After 2 hours of work, Naruto finally began to extend his aura. When he stomped earth style, it hit him. As he stomped down, he experienced a strange secondary flow in addition to the chakra. Instead of shattering the stone, a shockwave rushed through it and down his leg. Waves formed and swept out from the boulder as it reached the water level. I thought so, Kyuubi said in a smug tone. Naruto looked down at his footprint in the boulder and asked, what happened? Well, I have been thinking about it since the practice match with that woman. Demons are grounded in the forces of nature. Until a demon is 100 years and picks an elemental path to follow, they train for them all and can control each to a degree. As the greatest of all demons, I have mastered all of these forces. Now, because I have given you some of my essence and acknowledged you as my heir, some of that control has been passed to you. Kyuubi breathed deeply following that lengthy explanation. With the small amount of my essence that I have given you, it has taken a long time for the ability to rise, but now that you have it, it will not go away. We will spend the rest of the day for you to get a feel for the basics of each of them. For the remainder of the day, Kyuubi gave Naruto lectures on how to control his chakra and aura. He even went so far as to explain feelings and ideas that would facilitate working with each element. Naruto was able to perform small tasks with each of the elements by dusk. He was told that one day he would be able to create or destroy mountains, but with earth he could only create minor tremors. He could create tiny, powerful heat bursts with fire using his hands, but not real fire. He would eventually be able to create fires that could melt any metal and burn brighter than the sun, Kyuubi assured him. He could create waves with water, but eventually he would be able to create whirlpools and tsunamis. He could create a slight breeze with air, but eventually he would be able to create gales and possibly even take to the skies. He made sparks with lightning as he moved his fingers, but one day he would be able to control the most powerful storm's lightning. Forget training this ability for now. You have no time to waste on this skill. When you are ready and have time, we will go to my siblings. They will teach you the different aspects. But for now, go home. Tomorrow is a big day for you, human. Naruto was worn out from trying to control the new powers. He slept barely after returning to his apartment and getting into his bed. Naruto was unaware of the symptoms because he had never had to worry about chakra depletion before. Thankfully, the Kyuubi was able to heal his burns and the physical strain from the new training, as well as restore his chakra overnight. He woke up to discover that he was running late and that his alarm had been going off for 30 minutes. Oh crap! Exclaimed Naruto as he leapt from his bed and snatched up the bag containing his armor. After running through the kitchen, he grabbed an apple and left again. Not even by the front door did he leave. Rather, he vaulted through a window after pushing it open. He landed on the building next door after swinging off a flagpole and began to run in the direction of the exam building. Running inside, Naruto made his way to the second floor. He didn't pay attention to the conversation going on among the few people standing around. When he heard a fight, he turned to continue through an atrium. He was astounded by what he saw when he turned to look. Sasuke was engaged in combat with another green-clad boy. The fact that Sasuke was being kicked out of his life was what shocked him the most. Rather than intervening to break up the fight, Naruto approached Sakura, who was observing, and stood beside her. He yawned. What did I miss? On the way over, he had eaten the apple and wished he had gotten more. Sasuke was kicked hard into the air as he asked his question. When a turtle stopped him, the other guy, who had leapt up after him, appeared to be about to attack again. Ignorant of Naruto's approach, Sakura dashed to capture the falling Sasuke. Naruto observed the bizarre scene in front of him. Sasuke recovered swiftly to witness what Naruto saw because he had not sustained any serious injuries. When the boy's teacher showed up and punched him, Sakura was shocked. The teacher declared himself to be Kakashi's and Guy's opponent. They were all taken aback when he abruptly vanished and was found behind them, exhibiting a faster speed than Kakashi had previously displayed. After wishing his pupil Lee luck, he vanished. As Sasuke put the bandages back on his hands, Lee said, "I apologize," exposing severely calloused knuckles that were dotted with cuts and bruises. He vanished as well, most likely to join his teammates. "I fought you to test my abilities. There are many strong people in this exam, another of whom is on my team. I am sorry our fight was interrupted, but the exam will start soon and I must go," he said. "Well," said Naruto, with his hands folded behind his head. Then he turned to see Sasuke grinning slightly, understanding what Naruto was saying. The exam hasn't even started and already we're finding tough opponents. Sakura also gave a small, apprehensive smile. Sasuke said, "This exam sure is looking fun," as he glanced at his teammates. "Shall we go?" Naruto shouted, "Hell, yeah," and Sakura nodded. They approached the exam door together and forced their way through. They were shocked by what they saw. In addition to those from Leaf, the room was packed with ninja from numerous other ninja nations and hidden villages. Naruto barely had time to glance around before a blonde with long hair slithered towards Sasuke, forcing Naruto to leap out of her way. Regretfully, Naruto had the warning that Sasuke did not. Ino practically yelled, "Sasuke!" as she leapt on the boy with the black hair. Sakura immediately yelled at her after the exclamation. Regarding which of them Sasuke belonged to, they got into a small argument. Naruto avoided the situation and looked around the room. The red-haired Gaara and his teammates were indeed observing him from a corner of the room. Shikamaru, Ino's teammate, approached with an air of indifference. Next was Choji, the plump boy who was contentedly eating chips. They comprised Team 10's Genin along with Ino. Choji didn't seem to mind as long as he had food, but Shikamaru was mumbling something about how annoying Ino was. Naruto had never seen a more peculiar team. "Yo," Kiba yelled as he saw the two teams gathered together. He said, "There you are," as he approached Shino and Hinata. He boasted cockily, "I hope you've all been training. We have, and it won't be fun if the rest of you are knocked out too early," exhibiting excessive confidence. Shikamaru, "We're all ready for this," added. "If we weren't, then our teachers wouldn't have let us sign up." A fresh voice said, "Hey," and they all turned around. The ninja, who was in his 20s, said, "You are way too loud." He was from Leaf, according to his forehead protector. His tone suggested that this was not the first time he had said, screaming like schoolgirls, "You must be the rookies." He gestured behind them and said, "I'm Kabuto, and you're not helping by being so loud. Take a look at the team over there." 3 men with long blonde hair were in the group he was pointing at. "That team is from Hidden Rain. They're known for their short tempers, so settle down before you start a fight." Sakura inquired, "How many times have you taken the test?" She felt more anxious than ever. Kabuto reached into a pouch and said, "This is my 7th time, 6 times in the last 4 years." He took out a stack of cards from the pouch and said, "Look, you're new, so I'll give you some info. This is all the info that I've managed to collect. Ask me something and I'll answer as best I can." Shikamaru inquired, "How many teams from what countries?" In response, Kabuto pulled out a card and activated the information by pressing it against the ground and directing chakra into it. A graph with a small map appeared on the surface. After looking at the card, Kabuto quickly rattled off the following. There are 29 teams from Leaf, 10 from Sand, 7 from Rain, 2 from Grass, 2 from Waterfall, and 1 team from Sound. That's 51 teams. Sasuke got an idea and asked, "Do you have those cards on specific people?" Kabuto shuffled the deck and asked, "Who did you have in mind?" "Rock Lee," said Sasuke at once. Kabuto pulled the card out. It wasn't until he reached the next section that Kabuto seemed impressed. Rock Lee, first time taking the exam, with 4 times the number of necessary missions to get in. He's been training primarily in taijutsu, so he's probably a very good fighter. His teammates are Hyuga Neji and Tenten. Anyone else? When Naruto said, "One more," everyone was taken aback. As Kabuto took out the card, the others looked at Naruto curiously and said, "His name is Gaara of the Desert." According to Kabuto, Gaara of the Desert, from Hidden Sand, his skills are unknown. This is his first time taking the test. Whoa, says here that he's had a B-rank mission. That's high up for a genin. He returned the card to the deck. Just remember, everyone here is the top genin from their villages. It means that all those villages, Rain, Waterfall, Grass, Sand, they all have sent the best they can offer. Well, Sound is a new village, so there isn't much to it. Don't expect so much from them. Being demoted by Kabuto did not sit well with the Sound envoy. In response, they moved in and out of the crowd, getting ready to strike. They misjudged the genin surrounding the man, though. The first threw himself into the air to toss kunai, but Sasuke, anticipating the attack, stopped him. The next attempted a simple punch to Kabuto, but Naruto stopped him and twisted his hand behind his back before he could finish the swing. A growling Akamaru supported by Kiba stopped the girl from Sound. The 3 from Sound were pressed together and appeared to be about to launch another attack when a big cloud of smoke and a sizable contingent of Leaf Ninja materialized in the center. "Quiet down, all of you!" The Sound Nin were yelled at by the apparent leader. The tall man had scars all over his face and a black bandana around his head. Many of the genin had apparently heard of the head of the interrogation squad and were not happy to see him there. "I am Morino Ibiki, and I will be conducting the first test." However, they had no intention of arguing with him. "Everyone take a number and sit in the appropriate seat. Then we'll hand out the test." "A paper test," said Naruto, terrified and furious. This was the worst possible start for him because he performed horribly on tests. Ibiki explained the instructions for the remainder of the test after everyone had taken their seats. No inquiries would be permitted. There were 10 questions on the test. 10 points were awarded to each individual. A point was deducted for each incorrect response. 2 points would be deducted for each instance in which someone was caught cheating. Every team member needs to pass in order to advance to the second test. To ensure that no one cheated, the other nin who had accompanied him would be keeping an eye on things. Naruto's depression grew as he read the test questions before beginning. He would not be able to pass the questions by himself. They were far above his level. "Kyuubi," thought Naruto. Looking out through Naruto's eyes, the great demon woke up from his slumber and asked, "Can you help me with these?" Kyuubi mocked, "Shuriken? Cryptograph? I've never used any, figure it out on your own." Now, Naruto was feeling very ill, "But I don't know how," he said. "Then cheat," Kyuubi said as he took a seat once more. Then Naruto thought, "But if I get caught, I'll lose points," and paused. "Then don't get caught, kid, I'm going back to my nap." At that moment, Naruto understood that the true test was to cheat without being discovered. He calmed his breathing and closed his eyes. He then let his natural senses run wild all around him and stopped suppressing them. Other people had already begun cheating, he realized. He first listened to the other genin's movements and mutterings while keeping his eyes closed. His eyes were closed, so he was unable to see Hinata, who was seated next to him, giving him looks. Though Hinata was aware that cheating was expected of them, she was unable to decipher Naruto's actions. He had initially appeared very anxious, as if he was unsure of what to do. She was aware of his poor test scores. However, he halted and his eyes took on a distant expression before a faint smile came to his face and he closed his stunning blue eyes. The idea of those eyes staring at her made Hinata flush, and the next unexpected thought of those eyes taking off her clothes made her flush even more. She gave herself a shake and made herself think about the test again. She turned on her Byakugan, or white eyes, which gave her near perfect vision in all directions and, if she so chose, through objects. Naruto had opened his eyes, and she had to concentrate to keep from blushing again. His eyes were sharp and focused this time, much more focused than she had ever seen them. Naruto was looking around him with his eyes, absorbing as much information as he could. He appeared to know what he was doing based on the scrawling of the person a few rows ahead and to his right. The genin moved his pencil, and Naruto heard his low mumbling as he fixed his eyes and ears on him. Despite having to make many educated guesses, Naruto was able to learn enough about the subject to determine the answers to the majority of the questions. After determining what Naruto was doing, Hinata examined the responses on both papers. The fact that Naruto could cheat on someone over 20 feet away astounded her. While not all of his responses were accurate, they were nearly in line with what the man had recorded. Before moving on to the final question, Naruto worked through the ones he could respond to. It was illogical. It only stated that the question would be asked 10 minutes prior to the test's conclusion. When the question was posed, why did it matter? The final question finally came up. Ibiki said, "All right," drawing the genin's attention. "Time's almost up, I'll tell you the last question in just a moment. But first, a new rule. You may choose not to answer the question, but if you don't, all your points will be taken away and you will fail with the rest of your team. If you choose to risk it and answer the question incorrectly, then you will be banned from ever taking the Chunin exam ever again." There was a commotion during this announcement, but he ignored it. If you don't want to risk everything, then you better give up and try next time. Along with the rest of their teams, a number of people raised their hands and left in shame. Sakura felt conflicted. Since she was aware of Naruto's aspirations, she wouldn't take the chance that he would fail now and never succeed. Sakura began to lift her hand, but Naruto was quicker than her. Everyone who knew him was taken aback when his hand appeared in midair before he began to speak. Declaring, "Don't underestimate me," Naruto's hand slammed down on the table, nearly shattering it with the earth-based smash. He crossed his arms and scowled at the Junin, saying, "I will not run away. Even if I am a genin forever, I will still become the best, and that means that I will never back down or run away." In his heart, Kyuubi couldn't suppress a chuckle. "Ask the damn question." Almost everyone smiled after listening to Naruto's brief but animated speech. They all felt the hit on the table, and some questioned the boy's strength, but it didn't really matter. They all agreed with him and planned to take the test. Ibiki realized that nothing would change and that no more test takers would resign. He returned the focus to himself by nodding and clapping his hands. He said, "So, you're all sure about this?" Everybody was nodding. Seeing the bewildered expressions on everyone's faces, he smiled and said, "Okay, I guess I don't have any other option. I am going to have to pass you all. The point of this test was for you all to use your skills to gather information. Most of you should have been unable to answer these questions, so there were a few chunin put in with you that knew the correct answers. The last question tested if you were willing to take the tough missions. The hardest missions you will take will have the least amount of information on what you will be facing. None of you had any idea what the question was going to be, and yet you chose to take it anyway. That was the true test, and you all passed." Then there was a rush of activity. A black, clothed figure burst through the window. 2 kunai, fastened to 2 corners of the cloth, were hurled out, spinning through the air. The cloth suddenly unwrapped and transformed into a banner that read, "Examiner for the second test of the Chunin exam, Mitarashi Anko," and was suspended from 2 kunai that were affixed to the ceiling. A short woman wearing a long white jacket, a skirt, and a double-layered shirt made of cloth and wire stood in front of the cloth. She screamed at the students, "Don't celebrate yet. I am Mitarashi Anko, and we're all going on a field trip. Follow me." Everyone stayed put. Nobody spoke. They all stared at the raucous woman in shock. Before turning to face the first examiner, she glanced around the room, her face flushed with embarrassment. She frowned at him and said, 78? Ibiki, you let 26 teams pass? You went too easy on them." The initial examiner gave her a smile and a shrug. Anko snorted at Ibiki's remark. "There are a lot of exceptional students this year." "Too bad," she said with a small smile. Some of the quicker members realized that, at this rate, fewer than 25% of the original teams were expected to pass the second test, so they said, "I'm going to cut them at least in half." Who knew what would happen next? "All right, everyone," Anko concluded. This time, her tone was considerably better. The field trip was not going to be enjoyable, given her disposition and the tone in which she spoke. "We're going on a field trip." Upon their arrival, they discovered that the most eerie forest they had ever seen was surrounded by a 20-foot tall chain link fence. The trees were enormous and covered in vines that resembled snakes. Any visible growth was obscured by ivy and moss. It appeared to have been lifted from an odd movie sequence. There were also sounds coming from the opposite side of the fence. Among them were the typical sounds of the forest, such as insects buzzing, birds chirping, and wind blowing through trees. An animal scream reverberated from the forest before Anko began to speak, and other noises were not nearly as idyllic. "Welcome to practice area 44, she said. She faced the students with her back to the gate. "Also known as the Forest of Death," she remarked with joy. Numerous people complained that this part of the exam will last exactly 5 days. She took a moment to pull out some papers and begin distributing them, saying, "Too bad, my exam. I say what goes. Besides, there is plenty of food in the forest if you know how to find it." She glanced around to make sure everyone was listening and noticed that Naruto was already snapping on his armor. "If you sign these, you are accepting the possibility of death and you're still willing to take the test, so listen carefully before you sign it." The black scroll she held up bore the symbol for Earth. "This will be your survival test. Half of the teams will be given the Earth scroll," she said. "And the other half will have the Heaven scroll, in this case a white scroll bearing the Heaven symbol." She meant to cut the number of teams in half, saying, "To pass this test, you must come to the tower at the center of Area 44 with both scrolls. But that's not all. If you lose or have a teammate killed, don't reach the tower in time, or look inside either scroll before you reach the tower, you will fail. Now, sign the waivers if you believe you are prepared to face not just one another but also the Forest of Death for the next 5 days. To participate, a team needs all of its members to sign. Put them in line and submit them. You'll get your scroll after you do. You have 30 minutes to make up your mind." She then proceeded to the booth, where 2 chunin were waiting to collect the papers and distribute the scrolls behind a curtain. And just remember, killing is allowed for this part of the exam. Naruto grabbed the papers and signed them right away while he was snapping on his left leg guard. He reportedly mistook the glances his teammates were giving him regarding the armor when he said, "You can't expect me to back down now after that show I put on at the end of the first exam." "Where did you find such armor?" Sakura quickly followed, certain that nothing could go wrong with Sasuke and Naruto on her side. Sasuke had already signed his paper when he asked. Naruto completed fastening his chest plates and got up to perform a few light stretches. Been working on it with some friends for the past couple days, he said. Why? Do you want any? No way Naruto's shoddy armor could hold up to the fine work and shining steel of the Uchiha armor. Sasuke replied with a snort. There was some armor in the Uchiha estate, but it was still a little large for him. He would see about getting it refitted to his size now. After taking their forms and waiting in line for the scrolls, Sasuke returned to them a few minutes later with the scroll already concealed in his pouch. They were led to gate 12 by a Chunin, who unlocked all but the final lock, counted down until the exam began, and then unlocked it and allowed them entry before swiftly locking it all up again once they were outside the trees. They raced through the trees, staying up in the branches and aiming for speed and silence. We should set up a trap for another team to get their scroll. Sasuke said, we stand a better chance against any teams that way than we would if we split up. He paused on a high branch on one side of a clearing, saying, this is a good spot, but we still need a trap. I've got that, Naruto declared as he leapt from the tree and used a jutsu, and 2 more Naruto appeared around him. Each of the clones used a different jutsu and changed into a likeness of his teammates, and the real Naruto also underwent a transformation, but this time he appeared disheveled and sat with the 3 of them, seemingly defenseless and recuperating from an attack. Sakura and Sasuke took up positions on either side of the clearing, remaining as hidden as possible while still allowing Naruto and each other to be seen. When Naruto, the real Naruto, announced he was going to the bathroom a few minutes later, he walked behind a tree and then around the other side, but his appearance had changed slightly. He began to speak to the clones, but they attacked him because they knew it wasn't him, and the real Sakura and Sasuke also attacked. When the Sasuke clone punched the Naruto imposter into a tree, exposing him as a rain ninja, the illusion vanished, and the clones resumed their attack when Sasuke and Sakura dropped and cornered the ninja against a tree. The real Naruto then emerged behind the rain ninja and attacked, striking him hard in the base of the neck, knocking him out before he could do anything else. A search of the attacker revealed that he was not the one with the scroll. As he restrained the unconscious Nin, Naruto scowled. This isn't functioning. We need a new plan, he said, completing the final knot, because it will take too long. Sakura, who had been considering a plan ever since she witnessed Naruto create the clones, added, how about this? Create another clone. Before us, send the 3 of them. While we follow, they will come across other Nin and possibly set off traps. It was a good plan, and Naruto and Sasuke nodded. He created the clone and they left, with the real team staying a few hundred feet away from the clones. That way, we'll still have the upper hand if they are attacked. Naruto abruptly stopped and motioned for the other 2 to follow suit. The clones were killed, he said, watching closely, but it was quick, so I don't think it was a trap. Through the Sasuke clone, I caught a glimpse of the assailant. It appeared to be a grass nin. A voice said, how right you are, and they looked up to see the grass nin Naruto had spotted standing on a branch above them. Before they could react, a huge gust of wind blew through their position, and Sakura grabbed onto Sasuke to keep them from being separated. Naruto, on the other hand, was blown out of the trees and a considerable distance away before he could grasp a branch to stop his flight. Naruto barely escaped a huge snake's lunge after hearing a rustling sound that warned him of an assailant. The snake was bigger than anything Naruto had ever seen, easily 6 feet in diameter and 100 feet long. He had only a moment to realize this before it struck out again. I hatred. Snakes. The snake lunged at Naruto, its mouth wide, its fangs bare, poison gleaming, but it was too slow for Naruto, who was infused with the power of the great demon. Kyuubi roared from inside Naruto and poured out energy to the boy. With a sickening wet-breaking noise, the fangs broke off in Naruto's hands and the neck of the large snake snapped. A moment later, the summoned snake vanished in a puff of oily smoke, leaving Naruto standing in a tree, holding the fangs that still dripped with poison. Naruto reached out and grabbed the fangs, one foot kicking down to the lower jaw while the other clung to the tree with chakra. Keep them, Kyuubi said, his voice still full of rage, and return to your friends. They're probably being attacked. Naruto nodded and hurried away, still clutching the bloody fangs. He let his demon senses work as he ran, turning his hair red and changing his eyes to a fox's, but he didn't change it. That was still his trump card. The grass nin from earlier was running toward his teammate when he arrived, and he made Kyuubi's rage flare up again by wrapping himself around a branch like a snake and throwing his fangs, hoping to hit the man as he attacked, piercing the branch just in front of him. Sorry I'm late, he said, lowering himself to a lower branch while continuing to glare at the assailant, who had a snake like odor and an evil aura that made Naruto sick. I had a snake problem, he said, standing with his arms crossed and glaring at the man. Taking out the scroll they had, Sasuke yelled, "Naruto, this guy is on a whole other level. We don't stand a chance against him." He turned to face the man who was still wrapped around the branch, saying, "If we give you the scroll, please take it and let us go." "Sasuke, what in hell do you think you're doing?" The assailant merely laughed as Naruto screamed, furious that his teammate was even considering relinquishing the scroll. Sasuke took this as an agreement to his request and threw the scroll, but it never reached the Snake Man before a streak intercepted it and Naruto landed in front of him. "I see," he said, his hair standing up as he laughed. "To get rid of a predator, prey must give lead the predator to a different meal." Before Sasuke could say anything more, Naruto's fist struck his cheek. "Naruto, what are you?" The man began to laugh as he stood up on the branch and lifted his left sleeve to reveal a tattoo. "I don't care what you think," Naruto said, so they couldn't see the expression in his eyes as he spoke. "You're afraid, and you're wrong." He put the scroll into his bag and got to his feet. "This freak isn't just going to let us go. I doubt he even cares about the scrolls." "You're certainly correct," he said, raising his right hand and biting his thumb. "I was going to kill you all," he said, running his bloody thumb over the tattoo and down his arm as smoke and chakra began to swirl around the man. "Stop talking!" Naruto screamed as he leapt at the man, his chakra and rage from the Kyuubi finally overflowing his system. After a brief period of smoke, the area cleared to reveal a huge snake that was many times larger than the one Naruto had defeated. Before he could reach the man, the snake's tail swung out and swatted him out of the air, and it continued to hit Naruto, who had only one moment to make his attack matter. Naruto roared as he powered up, kicking off the tail before it could hit him again and launching himself at the snake's head. "Eat shit!" Naruto swooped down, and a vicious earth-style blow struck the snake's head. The Kyuubi's rage at snakes and the infusion of demon chakra into his own gave him a great deal of strength, and the snake's head smashed through everything in its path, leaving Naruto helpless against the man's assault. The attacker turned the wounded but unkilled snake toward Sasuke as a stream of gale force wind shot out of his mouth and caught Naruto in midair, causing him to crash into a tree, gasping for air and momentarily stunned. "Sasuke, what will you do?" the man asked, his eyes brimming with joy at combat. However, the snake was halted a few feet from Sasuke, and Naruto used the moment to gather himself and place himself between them. "All right. Are you just going to stand there, you coward?" Naruto gasped, looking at his teammate, who had red, fox-like eyes and noticeably darker and larger marks on his cheeks. Blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. Sasuke was deeply affected by Naruto's tone of disdain. "You're a fool boy." A long, fleshy, and most importantly, slimy tongue snaked down and wrapped around Naruto's arms, immobilizing him completely as it lifted him up into the air, leaving Sakura and Sasuke frozen in shock and disbelief, helpless to do more than watch. "I know about you," the man whispered from around his tongue, and Naruto instantly stopped struggling because it was all the man needed. The man quickly undid the binding on the left side of Naruto's torso armor and pulled it open, using the tip of his tongue to pull up Naruto's shirt and reveal the black seal that was visible, and quickly formed hand seals until his right hand's fingertips began to glow with chakra. "Five-part seal," the hand said as it struck Naruto's abdomen. He felt his connection to Kyuubi cut off instantly, and the source of most of his demon chakra was also cut off, along with the rest of his strength. He struggled for one last desperate act before fainting as he was flung away from the man. Before taking a ragged breath, he whispered, "Fox roar," put his hands to his mouth, and let out a long, roaring howl, frantically pleading for assistance from anyone who could hear the call. When Sakura saw Naruto go limp in midair, she acted quickly, throwing a kunai that caught the fabric by his side where the armor was still open, pinning him to a tree where he hung limply. Sasuke was startled into action, leaping into action against the attacker, his Sharingan eyes burning with intensity. This was another unintended consequence of the call. As Sakura ran to Naruto to help him to safety, she noticed a flash. Sasuke had trapped the man with some string attached to blades, and a fire attack raced down them, striking him in the face. However, the man resisted the attack with all of his might, and when the fire subsided, only one of his eyes was visible, and it appeared that the skin on his face was burning and peeling. Beneath that, however, was pale skin that appeared to be unharmed by the attack. The man said, "Very well done, Sasuke," and then his hand appeared and briefly obscured the eye, causing Sakura and Sasuke to find their bodies frozen. The man cocked his head to the side, as though he was listening to something, and said, "It seems that I don't have much more time," making an odd seal. "Remember this, Sasuke. I am Orochimaru." He quickly bit Sasuke in the neck, leaving an odd 3-tiered mark behind. "Come find me, and I'll show you how to kill your brother. I will give you power." His neck snaked out and his fangs grew. As Sakura turned to face Sasuke, she discovered that he was unfrozen and that he had screamed in agony, clutching at the mark on his neck that was burning him painfully. She had no idea what to do in this situation, so she hurried to his side and tried to comfort him. A few minutes later, Sasuke finally passed out from the pain. Sakura was essentially left alone, Naruto and Sasuke both unconscious, Naruto pinned to a tree by one of her kunai, and Sasuke limp in her arms when she gradually turned and saw something that frightened and amazed her. Figures emerged from the deepening shadows, not humans but foxes, and all three moved silently. Leading the way was the largest fox, a red male with silver hairs beginning to grow along his back, 4 tails waving through the air as he leapt from branch to branch in their direction, about the size of a small horse, with 2 other males, one a bright red-orange with 1 tail and the other a deep red with 2 tails, just a little smaller than the leader. With 3 kitsune, Sakura was scared and unsure of what to do. She began to cry as she held Sasuke close to her, burying her face in his hair and waiting for the end because she was certain that was what was going to happen next. "Who summoned us?" an aged voice asked. Sakura hesitated before slowly looking up. Her young green eyes met with red demon eyes. It was impossible for her to read the expression on the kitsune's face. She could hardly believe it when he spoke again. "Who called us?" There was authority in his voice, which was barely audible above a whisper. "Have you called?" She was still scared and didn't understand, so she held Sasuke closer to her without knowing what would happen. He sounded a little impatient this time, saying, "Yes, girl, called. We know it came from here, the howl. Tell us who called us, because this place smells of snakes and conflict." Sakura took a moment to react because she was having a hard time concentrating at this point. She was a little taken aback when she found herself pointing to Naruto's still unconscious form with a trembling hand and saying, "Naruto?" That was all she could think of because, after all, he was the one who howled, right? The leader turned to Naruto and said, "I see," before yapping and barking at the other 2. The 2-tailed one stepped forward in protest and was growled at until he gave in. "They will carry you to the den," the leader said. "However, we are only able to carry 1 person at a time. I promise that you won't get hurt as long as you abide by our rules." Sakura wondered why she believed him, whether it was because she was exhausted, because of his tone, or because she thought she was dreaming. Whatever the reason, Sakura slowly released Sasuke after believing the fox. The 1-tailed fox approached her, and the 2-tailed fox moved forward, using his tails to hoist the unconscious boy onto his back. Sakura grinned and felt her eyelids droop as he said, "Sleep," in a youthful, upbeat voice. "I'll take care of you," was the last thing she heard before she fell forward and was lifted by the tail and placed on his back. The leader said, "Keep her asleep," after he had Naruto on his back. "That other one too." The fox then leapt to the ground and guided them to the den of the Forest of Death Kitsune, saying, "We will wait until we hear from this one before we wake either of them." When Naruto woke up, he felt warm and heavy. He opened his eyes and attempted to sit up, but a weight was on his chest. He looked down and nearly chuckled when he noticed a small fox sleeping curled up on his chest, surrounded by other small foxes, one with an arm under its head and another across his legs. He used his free left hand to scratch the kit on his chest behind its ears, and the kit woke up, yawning, and nuzzling its head back into his hand. The other kit had woken up. "Leave us, we must talk," the kit said, nodding, and they ran off down a passage, playing with each other. "Now, explain some things to me, like how you were able to call us," Naruto said, noticing an elderly-looking fox with 4 tails sweeping across the floor. "For that matter, you are new to me, and why you seem to us familiar." "That's probably because I have a relation with Kyuubi." Naruto attempted to reach the great demon for assistance in explaining this, but he was unsuccessful. "Something is wrong," he said, trying harder, but still failing to reach Kyuubi. He attempted to use the Kyuubi's power, but was unsuccessful. Only a small part of his essence surfaced, and he was still unable to contact the demon inside of him. "I'm cut off, I can't reach Kyuubi." "How do you normally reach him?" the elderly kitsune asked him. Naruto was now becoming quite anxious. "Well, sometimes I meditate, but I should be able to talk with him whenever I want." The fox approached Naruto and leaned his head over the boy, touching his furry crest to Naruto's forehead. Naruto was a little shocked, but the fox quickly jerked his head back, saying, "You are indeed connected to him, but I never imagined you to be his container." The demon took a moment to process this information, and Naruto felt as though he was being examined and that points were being taken away from him for his appearance. I am guessing that the seal that has trapped our lord has been altered, Naruto said. After a moment, Naruto replied, "Yay, that would explain what happened. Is there anything you can do?" The old fox simply gave a headshake. "No, I'm not familiar with human sealing techniques. If removing the seal is even feasible, you will need to locate a person who is trained to do so." Naruto swore and thought, "Damn it," but then he realized, "How did you know I was the container?" The question made the demon laugh. He stood and gestured for Naruto to follow him as he walked to the door, saying, "I didn't get this old without learning a few tricks, young one." Naruto stood up and discovered that he had been relieved of his weapons and equipment pouch, but it didn't really bother him that much. "My pals?" Naruto followed the demon's four tails out and down a corridor that was well maintained, with rough walls made of packed dirt and baked earth, a floor covered in a scattering of leaves that made a nice rustling sound as they passed over them, and lit by glowing crystals pushed into the walls. "Still sleeping," was the response. "The female is in a mild slumber, but the other one needs my second-in-command's undivided attention to stay unconscious. Once more, I am unable to remove the dark seal that has been placed on him. Its taint is irrefutable." The great demon halted in the tunnel he had guided Naruto into and turned to face him, saying, "I wanted to talk to you before I woke either of them. I should introduce myself before we continue. My name is Nashi, and I am the current leader of this small pack." Naruto bowed respectfully as he turned to face the fox. "I am Uzumaki Naruto, genin ninja of Konoha, container and apprentice to the Kyuubi. A trainee." The fox led Naruto to an open doorway to a room and said, "Yes, that would explain some things. The female is in here, as you can see she is unharmed." When Naruto entered, he noticed that Sakura was indeed unharmed, with a kit curled up on her belly. "The little one is keeping her asleep while I talked with you. Do you wish us to wake her?" Naruto asked. Naruto hesitated to respond, biting his lip slightly. "No," he finally replied. "Just let her sleep. If she wakes up on her own, then we'll just see how things go." After observing the sleeping girl for a while, the elderly fox said, "Take my advice, don't wait too long to tell them, or you may lose them." Naruto nodded in agreement, and as he looked at Sakura, he began to wonder about something. The fox nuzzled the kit that was lying on Sakura, got up, and then curled up by her side after yawning. "How long did I sleep, Nashi?" Naruto became somewhat concerned. The demon fox glanced at him and laughed, "Only a day. After we brought you here you healed quite fast," asking if he was eager to get out. "Oh." The demon walked out into the hall once more, signaling Naruto to follow him. The boy did so and went on to explain the task they had been given. "No, it's not that," Naruto said quickly. "We just have a task to accomplish, and with 2 days gone we are limited on time." Naruto nodded, but he continued to frown. "We did not find any such scrolls in your bags," the demon said, adding quickly, "Understand, we searched them for the safety of this den and my clan." Naruto punched the wall and said, "Damn it, my scroll must have been stolen by that freak during the battle." He was shocked when the fox in front of him began to laugh, saying, "That means we have to get 2 scrolls, and not just 1. "I have some good news for you," he said, guiding Naruto along a path that sloped upward. "One of my sons came upon a group of 3 humans while returning to the den. They attacked him because they were stupid." Nashi showed the boy a small room with bags in one corner, and he recognized 3 of them as belonging to him, Sakura and Sasuke, while the other 2 were unknown to him. "Those 3, on the left, are yours, I believe," Nashi said after they were dealt with. "The 3 that were removed from the attackers are the ones to their right. We have discovered or removed the remains of ninja from the forest, which is what the other bags and items are. You can take anything you want." "Thank you, Nashi," Naruto said, approaching the bags and beginning to search through them. He discovered a damaged but still identifiable heaven scroll in the second bag. "Yes." He took his backpack from the pile and tucked it inside. He stood up and picked up his bag and those of his teammates. He turned to the leader of the den and smiled. "I think you should hear my story." The kitsune smiled at him like a fox and said, "You know, I was waiting for you to say that." The elder led Naruto down the hallway and into a spacious room, saying, "Come this way, I'll call the others to listen as well." Sakura must have dozed off en route because the next thing she knew, she was waking up on a warm bed of furs. She briefly believed that she was back home and that it had all been a dream, but when she sat up, she realized that the light was coming from a glowing quartz crystal set into the earthen den wall rather than her bedroom window. She pulled the top fur tightly against her as she looked around, which unnerved a puppy that had been sleeping on the edge of the bed and sent it rolling to the floor. Sakura watched the pup, not sure what had happened before she fell asleep, and after it righted itself, it watched her back for a moment, yapping and tilting its head before getting up and leaving the room. Sakura jumped out of the bed, delighted to see that she was still wearing her clothes, and was searching for her weapons when a female voice came from the door. The pup that had fallen out of the bed earlier followed, attempting to hide behind the larger female's legs. "Ah, I see," said a large female fox standing in the doorway, smaller than the other three Sakura had previously seen and with two tails. "My name is Kokyu, and I apologize if my kit woke you up. However, the others are waiting for you because you are awake. Your weapons have been taken for the time being and will be returned when you depart, so don't waste your time looking for them. But please, follow me right now." Without waiting to see if Sakura followed, she turned and walked out of the room. Sakura had no choice but to follow, and she was also starting to worry about Sasuke and Naruto. The den was very comfortable, with lighted crystals every 10 feet, and it looked like it was under a tree because the walls were covered in roots. Sakura was too busy observing the area and the other hallways that intersected with the one they walked down to notice the puppy observing her. The fox moved aside to allow her entry, and the small fox yipped and charged in tackling a figure by the bright crystal in the center of the room. Sakura entered and blinked, trying to make sense of what she was seeing, and it seemed that Naruto was being mauled by a pack of the small kitsune. Kokyu led her through the passages without speaking to her until they reached a large room. She screamed, "Naruto," and began to grab for kunai that weren't there. Her friend and teammate was being attacked, so she was shocked when they all simply stopped. Naruto turned to face her and smiled, waving a hand in her direction. As the little foxes continued to jump around his feet, Naruto stood up and said, "Hey, Sakura, perfect timing," before approaching her and saying, "Welcome to the den of the kitsune of the Forest of Death." Demon foxes? She had speculated, but now that she knew, her anxiety increased. "Yay," a smiling Naruto replied, "Don't worry. They won't hurt us unless we start something," Sakura said, but she wasn't paying attention. Instead, she was scanning her surroundings with a worried frown. "Where is Sasuke, Naruto?" She became concerned about her teammate as Naruto blanched a little. "Hisauma." Naruto scratched the back of his head with his free hand and said, "Here, you better follow me." He turned and proceeded down one of the passages, with one bright red fox following him closely behind his heels. "That guy that attacked us, he did something to Sasuke," Naruto said. "I've asked the foxes if they can reverse it, but they lack the necessary understanding of human seals." Something had happened to her beloved Sasuke. Sakura began to worry even more, but she stopped abruptly when a fox emerged from an adjacent corridor and blocked their path. The fox glanced at Sakura and then Naruto, then bowed to him before moving away. "Sorry, my lord," he said sternly, "is there anything I can do to assist you?" Sakura was taken aback because the fox she had previously encountered, the one that brought her to Naruto, had shown no interest in her. This fox, on the other hand, was helpful and respectful of Naruto above all others. What had transpired during her sleep? Naruto remarked, "We were just going to see my other friend. Didn't I tell you to stop acting like the lord?" The kitsune merely grinned. He laughed lightly after saying, "Yes, my lord, you did." But then he became very serious. "Anu was watching your friend when something happened." A dark power surge from the boy. "I was going to see the elder when Anu called me to him to help control the energy and keep him asleep." Sakura worried as Naruto scowled and bit his lip a little. Naruto said, "Yes, go to Nushi, tell him what happened," and the fox listened for a moment before Sakura and I went to see Sasuke and Anu. "Additionally, let Nushi know that we will be prepared shortly." The fox bowed once more before he fled down the tunnels to locate the elder. "Come on, Sakura," Naruto said as he began to run down the tunnel, and the girl immediately followed him, worried about her love interest, but other thoughts were racing through her head. She looked at Naruto's back as he ran, and, despite the fact that they were surrounded by strong demon foxes, they weren't in danger because he wasn't wearing his armor. His demeanor showed that he knew, or at least trusted, these kitsune, and, finally, the way the fox they had just met had respected Naruto left Sakura wondering what had happened. Sakura began to rush to his side, but Naruto stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. The black-haired boy was lying on some furs, sweating and twitching a little as a fox the color of a bright fire watched him intently, its eyes glowing as it maintained the strong sleep spell. "How is he doing, Anu?" Naruto stepped forward and asked. The tense response was, "Asleep, if barely, the thing on his neck is very strong. It is making it difficult to stay asleep." Sakura knelt next to him and questioned, "Why is he asleep? Why don't we just let him wake up? What had that guy done to her, Sasuke?" She was terrified. The fox that had bowed to Naruto earlier padded across the floor to Anu, looking down at Sasuke, and said, "Naruto, tomorrow we will take you from the den and back into the forest above. You have your task to accomplish." Naruto nodded, and Nashi turned to Sakura. "As for you, I'm afraid that you cannot be allowed back into your world with knowledge of us." They turned to see Elder Nashi enter the room, followed by the fox that had bowed to Naruto earlier. "What?" Sakura exclaimed. "Why am I unable to? Naruto is returning. What would happen to Sasuke, and why would they harm her?" Sakura didn't understand. Naruto was Naruto, and there had been strange moments, but why would he be special to a group of demons? "Yes, demons, not people. And you will be allowed back, but a memory jutsu will be used to make you forget what you've seen and heard here," Neshi said calmly. "First, you must understand," Neshi said. "Naruto is very special to my people. You will also return your friend with the taint to the forest. He won't require the memory jutsu because he has been in forced sleep." "I'm going to forget everything?" Sakura glanced at Sasuke and around. When Nashi looked down, he saw the kid concealed behind Naruto's leg. "It will be as a dream," Nashi said. "Cassie, why aren't you with the others of your age?" The small fox looked down as he stepped out from behind Naruto. He was too young to speak human, so he made yips and barks instead. Nashi listened, and apparently so did Naruto, but Sakura couldn't understand any of it. After a minute, Nashi looked up from the kid to Naruto. "Is that all right?" While Sakura attempted to comprehend, Naruto grinned and nodded. "Cassie is one of our most promising, but he lacks experience, something that you could give him." "I would be honored with your trust," Naruto bowed, adding, "I will take charge of him and do my best to take care of him. He will learn about the human world from me." Nashi turned to Anu and said, "Good, he will also be a useful messenger between us. Do you need a replacement?" "No," the demon replied. "I can hold him for another day in the forced sleep if there are no more surges of the taint." The fox that followed Nashi in bowed to the elder and approached Anu, saying, "Okay, I'll leave Shinran here with you if you need to switch or need help." "Thank you, elder," Anu said, appreciating Nashi's recognition of his exhaustion and leaving a capable replacement. "Now Naruto, Sakura, let us go, get your equipment and prepare you for tomorrow," Nashi said as he began to leave the room, but Sakura and Naruto trailed behind him. "If I understand correctly, you will have 2 days to get the remaining scroll and get to the tower." Sakura looked at Naruto and thought, he must have told the demon about the test, but what else had Naruto told them? She was resolved to remember as much as she could and to use memory jutsu when the time came. She was also resolved to find out why they were being treated this way. She was certain Naruto was involved, but she didn't know what had transpired between them. Sakura wondered if the clan leader was requesting permission from Naruto. "If you would allow us, we could go and get the other scroll you need and provide you with an escort to the tower." "No," Naruto said with a sigh. "We have already stayed longer than we should have. We must pass or fail this test on our own merits." "As you wish, sir." Once more, a demon addressed Naruto respectfully, but this time it was the clan leader. Why? How was the dead last gaining the respect of a demon clan? As she gazed at the blonde teammate, more questions than ever before whirled around her mind. The thought of her bag gave Sakura a flash of insight. "I thought I told you to knock it off," Naruto said, laughing a little before turning to face her. "Hey, Sakura, I've got our bags, we'll go over them before we go. I want to make sure we've got everything." Sakura began to mentally review her possessions, saying, "Yay, alright Naruto, let's do that." Yes, pen, paper, and ink. She would leave a note to herself, and if she didn't remember, she would find it and be able to break the jutsu and get her memories back when she woke up. Nashi excused himself and went down another passage, but Cassie, the small fox, stayed. Naruto led Sakura down a passageway and into a small room with a fur bed, while all of their packs were lying in the corner. Naruto tossed her the bag and said, "Okay, here's yours. I'll check mine, and don't worry, I've got the scroll." Naruto held up the heaven scroll and then turned to his bag and began going through it, making sure he had everything he needed and checking his equipment. While he was looking through his belongings with his back to her, Sakura took a moment to get her pen and a small scroll she kept for emergencies. She then scribbled a note to herself, making sure to cite sources so she would know it was from her. "Sakura, I am writing this message to myself, you, so you can undo the jutsu and get the memories back. Naruto is hiding more than you think, and if you undo the jutsu, you will understand what I mean. If you read this, it is a message from yourself to prove that this is you. The scrapbook of Sasuke pictures is hidden under your bed at home. If you are reading this, then we have failed and a memory jutsu has been used on you to block out a period of time of approximately 1 day. Sakura sighed and began going through the rest of her belongings, and when she discovered that everything was there, she closed it and tied the knots. She rolled it up and placed it at the bottom of her bag with her few exploding notes, hoping that she would be able to fight it off, but she was going to fight off a jutsu from demon foxes, so she doubted she would be able to keep all her memories, if any. "All right, I'm ready," she said, turning to Naruto, who was playing with the fox. Sakura now took her time examining it. It was the same size and color as a typical fox, but it behaved like a cub, and its tail was peculiar. It had a slight branch at the end of the wide tip that gave the appearance of a fork. When he noticed that she was examining the fox's tail, Naruto remarked, "Little Cassie here has already finished gathering power for his first tail and started growing his second, indicating that he is a genin. In order to become a chunin in the kitsune's ranks, he is currently working on his second tail. Junin would be represented by 3 tails and Kage by 4, I suppose. However, they don't precisely adhere to our hierarchical styles. According to them, the person with the most tails is the leader, and that person establishes the chain of command." Naruto rolled the small fox onto his back and tickled his belly, saying, "Anyway, Nashi happens to be the leader of this den, and he has 4 tails. And going by tails is a bad indication for most demons. Some get bigger with more power, others just gain more abilities." "Why are you telling me this, and how do you know all of this?" Sakura stared at her teammate in awe. No one that she knew of could tell her that much about demons, but Naruto spoke of it as if it was nothing. But Naruto didn't answer. He lay back and the little fox jumped on his chest. "Naruto, what is going on? You are behaving as though these are normal people, but they are demons. You ought to get some rest. Come on, I'll show you to your room." He got up and said, "We have a lot of work tomorrow." Cassie rolled off his chest and leapt up onto the bed of furs. Sakura scurried up and followed Naruto into the hall, leaving her bag behind. "What's happening, Naruto?" She repeated her question, and Naruto continued to walk for a while before turning down a hallway to her room. At her door, Naruto said, "They're friends, that's all you need to know for now," turning around but avoiding eye contact. Sakura entered the room and declared, "Well, I don't trust them," claiming that they were demons. Before she could reply, Naruto turned and left. "Then maybe you shouldn't trust me," he said. From beneath the tree's bare roots, Naruto observed the 3 kitsune leaping into the darkness. They had been led to a location near the secret entrance to the demon's lair. Sakura couldn't resist the memory jutsu because it had been applied while she was asleep, and a follow-up spell had been added to keep her asleep while being transported. Sasuke had been placed under a powerful sleeping spell to allow the kitsune to escape undetected. Sasuke's wake-up time was uncertain, but Sakura's would be in a minute. With his head resting on top of Naruto's bag, Cassie was crouched back in the corner. Emerging from beneath the roots, Naruto brought his armor, which he had previously removed from his bag. He sat and put on the armor, taking care not to damage it when that freak undid it. Although it would function until the end of the second test, it turned out that he would need to replace one of the straps. Sakura began to stir. She touched her own head. A headache was one of the memory jutsu's side effects. "Where am I?" As he put on his forearm guards, Naruto's voice sounded distant to her. "Under a tree in the Forest of Death, with 2 days left in the exam." "What?" Sakura exclaimed, shocked. Had she slept for the past 2 days? Naruto calmly put on his headband and said, "Quiet, we're being watched." Sakura attempted to stand but was too unsteady. She took one shaky step before collapsing to her knees. "They're behind me, in the trees." She began to worry as she turned to face Sasuke. If they attacked, they would be unable to repel them. She began to shake. "I can't fight in this condition," she said. She froze when she heard a tiny growl coming from the dark corner. "And without Sasuke, how are we supposed to fight anyone?" Out of the shadows, a small fox with a peculiar tail moved to Naruto's side near the entrance. Naruto said, "We'll take care of it," and he left with the fox. Sakura could only observe and speculate. What was causing him to act so aloof? Why was there a fox there? Something, like someone yelling from a soundproof room, was persistently bothering her. Shaking herself, she approached Sasuke in an attempt to rouse him. Across the little clearing, the sound crew observed from the branches of a nearby tree. Only a minute ago, they had located the team. They could now kill Uchiha Sasuke and complete their mission. Naruto emerged into the open space. He wished he had had more time to set up traps to protect their position. Having Cassie by his side made him feel better, but he wasn't sure if he could defeat the 3-sound ninja. He was going to use his human chakra. He chose to hold off until he was in dire need of demon chakra because he had very little of it. Naruto prepared himself by drawing his kunai. Cassie sank into the ground and appeared to vanish from view without a sound. Dropping into the lightning style's first stance, Naruto directed chakra into his arms and legs. At that moment, the sound crew made the decision to appear. From the branches, they fell to a location across the clearing. "Give us the Uchiha and we might let you live," someone said. Most of his face was bandaged, and behind him was a feathery cloak. "Sorry," Naruto said, allowing Cassie to position himself, "but I won't give him up. I need him to pass the test." "Why do you want him? Did that snake-summoning bastard send you after him?" The other male member of the sound team said, "Orochimaru." Face guards hung down from the side of his forehead protector, and his hair was spiky and black. "What are you talking about?" The statement was, "I don't know what his name is, but he left some kind of seal on my teammate." Cassie had crept up into a tree in silence after poking his head up from underground, right behind the sound team woman. "Your time is up, give us your scroll and I'll let you go." "You'll let us go?" asked the woman. "You're outnumbered 3-1. You don't stand a chance." As Cassie began to shower the sound with razor-sharp leaves, Naruto grinned. Naruto mentally noted that he should ask the little fox to teach him how to do that. The sound team woman pulled out some needles and began blocking the leaves. Lifting his arms, the man wearing the face guards gathered chakra into them. "Zankuuha," he exclaimed. The leaf shuriken were ripped up by the air-slicing blast, which knocked them off balance due to their light weight and sent them roaring up into the trees. However, no other reaction appeared to occur. The nin said, "Ha, a weak trap," and turned back to Naruto. "I'll take this one, Dosu. You and Kin go and kill the others." "As you can see," said the person who went by Dosu. He raised the guard on his right arm and prepared to strike, saying, "We are not to be trifled with." Naruto was already performing hand seals when he said, "You had your chance, now you will all die. Kill him, Zaku." With the words, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, 6 clones materialized next to Naruto. Together, they uttered, "You shouldn't underestimate me, either." They engaged the 3 attackers in combat in 2-person teams. In a split second, 4 foxes descended from the trees above, and pops could be heard from above. While the original dropped next to the real Naruto, the 3 Cassie clones descended and joined the 3 Naruto teams. They charged the sound team together. The sound split up, trying to battle Naruto, Cassie, and the clones one at a time rather than as a team. Kin, the girl, used needles and other weapons to attack, but she was only able to hit one of the clones before the little fox ran by and tripped her. She was pushed to the ground by the other clone, who twisted her arm and held it behind her back. Dosu attacked the clones by blasting their eardrums with sound waves. He was able to eliminate the Kitsune clone and one of the Naruto clones. The final Naruto clone to attack him kicked him high. The clone was able to deliver a devastating blow to the device before the ninja defended it with it on his arm. The clone was destroyed by the device's shockwave, and Nin was flung back against a tree. The final group of clones faced Zaku, the last sound ninja. In an effort to eliminate the clones, he assumed an offensive stance and launched 2 air-slicing blasts, one from each hand. The 2 Naruto clones ducked and grabbed his arms, twisting them behind his back, but he did manage to capture the fox clone that served as a distraction. Naruto believed the battle was over, but Zaku wasn't done yet. He blasted the clones, holding him apart with the air-slicing blasts he fired from either hand, even with his arms held behind his back. Dosu said, "You can't defeat us like that," and stood up. He made an effort to conceal the fact that his arm device had multiple long cracks originating from a fist imprint where he had deflected the clone's blow. Naruto said, "I didn't need to defeat you," and he moved aside. Under the roots, a figure was surrounded by a purple, tainted chakra. "I just needed to stall you till you woke up." As Sasuke put it, "Who woke me up?" Sakura had huddled back against the roots, afraid of the sensation that swept away from Sasuke. From the mark Orochimaru had made on his neck, black shapes protruded. They also covered that side of his face and his left arm. He emerged from beneath the roots, his Sharingan activated, and surveyed the little clearing. "We did," Zaku said with a smile, pointing to his teammates. He directed his arms toward Sasuke, concentrating chakra into them. "And now you die," he said. He yelled, "Zankuha!" and hit Sasuke with 2 blasts. Nothing remained where Sasuke had been after the attack's smoke and dust had cleared. Zaku laughed when he said, "Ha, I killed him, because it was so simple." "Killed who?" a voice next to him asked. From a tree branch, Naruto, Sakura, and Cassie observed Sasuke backhanding the sound nin across the clearing. Sasuke slid up behind Zaku as he stumbled to his feet. Sasuke's foot was placed in the center of Zaku's back, and both of his arms were twisted behind him before Dosu could warn him. There was a sickening crack sound coming from both of Zaku's shoulders before Sasuke had time to power up another attack. Sasuke had just dislocated both, and he merely smiled. Sakura could no longer stand by and watch. This was not her Sasuke. He could not be the source of this dreadful sensation. Before her Sasuke vanished in those horrible black shapes that were slowly devouring him, she had to stop him. Running up behind Sasuke, Sakura yelled, "Stop!" and put her arms around him. Mid-step, Sasuke stopped. For a moment, he looked to his left and observed her over his shoulder. Plesia Stopa. There was no more utterance. Everyone held their breath in anticipation of what would come next. The black marks that had first appeared on Sasuke gradually began to disappear after a considerable amount of time, reverting to the original mark on his neck. Sasuke was disconnected from the power that had surged through him when the mark had completely retreated, and he passed out from exhaustion from attempting to both retain and contain that much power. Sakura was fortunately there to apprehend him. She lowered him gently onto the floor so he was sitting. Between the other members of his team and the sound ninjas, Naruto and Cassie descended from the branches. Dosu said, "We underestimated you today," while he dug into his pouch. At the beginning of the test, they were given an earth scroll, which he took away. Naruto glanced at the scroll and nodded, saying, "If you let us go, we'll give you our scroll." In a cloud of smoke, the clone that was securing the girl vanished. Kin and Dosu picked up Zaku together and carried him away, leaving Naruto to pick up the earth scroll. After examining the scroll, Naruto concluded that it was the earth scroll they required. Grinning, he placed it in his bag along with the scroll of heaven. Leaping to his feet, Cassie wrapped himself around Naruto's shoulders. Despite his talent, the methods he employed still exhausted him. Naruto moved in the direction of his teammates. He inquired, "Are you two all right?" Naruto approached them and knelt down next to Sasuke, who was still panting heavily and breathing heavily. "We've got both the scrolls now. We should go to the tower as soon as we can." "You don't look so good, Sasuke." Sakura kept an eye on Naruto and the fox perched atop his shoulders. With a smile on his face, Naruto reached up and gave the fox a scratch behind its ears. "This is Cassie. I found him while scouting for a spot for us all to hide. From what I can tell, his family or den or whatever was crushed by a falling tree some time ago, and he's been surviving on his own. And, well, he showed me this place and I like him, so I'm letting him tag along with us." Sakura didn't think he was real. She was still troubled by the message in the note to herself. It had warned that it might be dangerous, so don't tell Naruto. She had witnessed the fox using jutsu, so anyone could see that it wasn't natural. No, she had only witnessed the effects. Naruto could have created the clones and changed their appearance to resemble the fox. It could have been planned ahead of time, and even the leaf shuriken could have done it. However, she was aware that she was merely deceiving herself. She nodded to Naruto and grinned, but she was terrified of what she didn't know, what had taken place. Before they moved toward the tower, they took a brief break so Sasuke could regain some of his strength. As they approached the tower, Sasuke noted that there would likely be obstacles and ambushes. Naruto promised to point out any ambushes and warn them of them. Sakura consented, but she also wanted to discuss the note with Sasuke privately. With Cassie on his shoulders, Naruto began to move forward, with Sakura and Sasuke trailing a few hundred feet behind. Sakura said, "Sasuke, first." He turned to face her again because she was lagging behind them a bit. Sasuke didn't fully comprehend the statement. Something is going on, something wrong, maybe something bad. His face showing no signs of thought, he reached up to the mark on his neck and gave it a little rub before lowering his hand and moving on. He said, "I'm fine," his thoughts constantly so self-centered. "Stay focused on the test, it can wait till later." When she said, "No, Sasuke, I don't think it can," she sounded very determined. She pulled out the letter for herself and then showed it to him. "It's Naruto, he's hiding something, something big," she said. He took his time reading it. He inquired, "Is this your handwriting?" Apparently, he had forgotten about the scrapbook. He read the note again after she nodded. He turned to look at Naruto. "I believe you." Sakura was shocked and asked, "You do?" He shook his head when she asked, "Why? Do you also have a note to yourself?" He looked at Naruto and the companion on his shoulders and said, "No, but there are other things. I might not have believed them except for your letter and that fox." "What do you mean?" He shook his head and attempted to regain his focus. "After the attack from the guy, I fell asleep, but not asleep, it's hard to explain," he said. "I can recall trying to wake up again and again, but I could not. But on 2 occasions I almost managed, I heard voices, trying to put me back to sleep. I managed to open my eyes for a brief second. I saw a fox, a demon fox. Sakura paused. She had just discovered a missing piece. Naruto knows, she recommenced, her gaze fixed on Naruto before them. I am sure that he knows. Sasuke, who was feeling much better now, asked, "You're saying that Naruto already broke through the memory jutsu?" His misgivings and mistrust of Naruto were intensifying. "No," she said with a headshake. "I think that he was never under a memory jutsu, and he's not telling us." "Why wouldn't he tell us? We're supposed to be teammates." Sasuke was growing increasingly irate with Naruto and curious about what had transpired during his absence. Sakura stated, "We can't confront him," now a little concerned about Sasuke's potential actions. "We know you weren't awake, you claimed to be asleep, or something, so we should get this memory jutsu off me so I can remember, and then we can decide what to do," the note stated. After a minute, he said, "Agreed, but I'll be keeping an eye on him. There's a big thing going on, and he's in the middle of it." Sakura nodded, agreeing to watch him as well. They followed Naruto and watched for any ambushes or traps. Naruto stopped at a stream after walking through the woods for a while and began gathering firewood. Sakura and Sasuke followed shortly after. Naruto remarked, "It's getting late," while gathering stones to encircle the fire and stacking wood for it. "I say we rest here tonight and start early tomorrow," he said. He was correct, of course, but Sasuke ignored him as he sat down by the fire and lit it with a little jutsu. Sakura sat close to Sasuke as usual, but this time she was quiet and didn't even speak to the person she loved. "We'll still get there in time and we'll be safer than trying to push on through in our condition." Naruto stood up and said, "I'll see if I can get some fish," and Cassie trotted after him, curious to see what he would do next. They both missed the glances that Sakura and Sasuke exchanged as they watched the fox follow at his heels, and then they each got up and gathered more wood. A few minutes later, Naruto returned with 3 fish, Cassie trotting after him with another fish between his sharp teeth. Naruto using some long sticks as skewers, and while the fish were cooking, he observed that his teammates were not communicating with each other. "All right," Naruto said, glancing between them. "What's happening?" After exchanging glances, Sakura opened her mouth to speak, but Sasuke stopped her with a raised hand. Sasuke looked from Naruto to the fire and said, "Nothing is wrong," sounding a little more detached than normal. "But we were defeated utterly, and it wasn't by a team, it was by one man." "Yay," Naruto said, nodding. "What are you trying to say?" He was regarded with bewilderment by Sakura and Sasuke. "Really believe that we are unbeatable? Be practical. As the lowest level of ninja, we are genin. Each of us still has a long way to go. And you have no right to believe that one loss to a man so far above us will deter me." When he looked at them both, he took a breath and said, "I'll bet. I know there are beings out there far stronger even than him. What about you? Are you giving up?" After he finished, Sakura said, "No, I'm not giving up," reaching for a skewer and beginning to eat one of the fish, "but he did something to both of you, I saw that." Naruto placed a hand over his belly, while Sasuke rubbed the back of his neck with one hand. Sasuke reached for a fish and said, "This seal did something to me, boosted my power back there, but I almost lost control." "What happened to you, Naruto?" Sakura and he both eagerly awaited Naruto's response. "He just knocked me out with one punch to the gut," he claimed. "That bastard hit me hard." Sakura stammered, but Naruto shook his head, "I thought I saw him doing a jutsu." He began to tell the fish, "You are mistaken," and would not respond to any further inquiries. Sasuke and Sakura reluctantly allowed Naruto to take the first watch. They were still suspicious of him, but he persisted, and they were both exhausted, so they went to sleep while Naruto extinguished the fire and kept watch over them. Naruto was concerned that they might suspect something, but he had no evidence, only the looks they gave him. Cassie had long since finished his own fish and was curled up with Naruto, sleeping soundly, when he reached down and scratched the little fox behind the ears. Naruto had set up multiple traps and was certain that they would be okay, or have enough warning to be okay. After a few hours, he woke Sasuke to take his place on guard, and Naruto told him where the traps were set and then curled up next to the fox. This was Sasuke's first chance, and he planned to take advantage of it, and he waited until he was certain Naruto was asleep before he took a close look at the fox, noting that, although it was the size of a normal fox, its appearance suggested that it was still a juvenile. What caught his attention, though, was the tail. He could see that it split at the end, but he had no idea what this meant for a demon fox, because he was certain that it was. Sasuke took a moment to explain his suspicions to Sakura before he woke her up. and she confirmed them, telling him about the altercation with the sound nin that had taken place before he woke up. They both glanced at the small fox that had moved while it was sleeping and was now curled up directly against Naruto, who was snoring softly. "You believe he poses a threat?" Sakura expressed her hope that he wasn't in her tone. "Definitely," he said, scowling at the fox. "It is dangerous if it is capable of using jutsu. However, it appears to support Naruto, or at the very least, be prepared to fight alongside him." Sakura took her turn on guard and nodded, saying, "We should watch them both." That night, nothing more occurred, although there were sounds of combat in other areas of the forest. It was going to be the final day, and perhaps the most difficult one, as multiple teams had already reached the tower. Fortunately, Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke only needed to reach the tower because they already had their scrolls. Instead of using a fire to warn other teams of their location, they ate what little food they could find for breakfast. Then, with a slight preference for stealth over speed, they headed for the tower. Naruto forced them to stop at a spot where a lot of blood had seeped into the ground, but they only made a few other course changes, mostly to avoid obstacles and traps. It appeared that there had not been much of a fight. Hundreds of senbon needles were scattered in one spot, as though they had all been aimed at a single individual. Dropping to his knees, Naruto rubbed his fingers through the blood. Then he held it up to his nose and inhaled its scent. He was accompanied by Cassie, who smelled the blood but was much more reserved, shivering, and afraid of something. Impatiently, Sasuke questioned, "What is it, Naruto?" Sakura, who felt uneasy around so much blood, stood close to the boy with the black hair and asked, "Why have we stopped?" Naruto said, "It's nothing," and got to his feet, wiping the blood from his fingers. Sakura and Sasuke were aware that it was a lie. There's a reason he made them stop. However, they left without asking him any questions, with Naruto leading the other two by a small margin and Cassie by his side the whole time. Naruto sensed a change in the texture of the blood. He questioned why he had been drawn to the carnage and who had created it. Who among the genin had the strength to carry out such an action? He didn't, however, express his worries to his teammates. The term, teammate, had actually been overused. The letter caused Sasuke and Sakura to lose faith in Naruto, and it became increasingly clear that he was keeping some significant information from them. The taint that Orochimaru had put on Sasuke made Naruto distrust him, and Sakura's words in the fox den made him distrust her as well. Despite a few near misses, they arrived at the tower without much difficulty because they preferred stealth. Once, while two teams battled valiantly below, they crept through the branches. At other times, they had to be on the lookout for ambush teams and traps. At that point, Naruto's keen senses and Cassie's forest knowledge were most helpful. An hour later, they were only slightly worn out when they reached the tower. They entered the building. Naruto pivoted and gazed upon the woodland. Despite his suspicions that they were being watched, he shut the doors and moved to the center of the room. They gathered in the center of the room and looked around. "All right," Sasuke said. "What happens now?" Naruto glanced around the upper floors. It seemed like the room was deserted. "It looks like no one is here. Did we pass?" he asked in a tone that betrayed his complete uncertainty. Sakura said, "I don't think so," as she looked at the writing on one of the walls. Heaving a sigh, Naruto took the scrolls from his bag and said, "If you lack heaven, seek wisdom, be prepared. If you lack earth, run in the fields, seek advantages. These rules will guide AAA's extremes." "I wonder what that means." "It means we're not done yet," he said, tossing Sakura one of the scrolls. Together, they held out the scrolls and then simultaneously pulled them open to examine what was written inside. "I think we have to open them. I'll bet anything that the missing word is in the scrolls." The type of jutsu that had been written inside the scroll was only known to Sasuke. "Throw them away!" screaming Sasuke. Both of the smoking scrolls were thrown by Sakura and Naruto. Startled by the smoke and the yell, Cassie scurried behind Naruto's legs. Team 7 prepared for whatever would emerge from the smoke by forming fighting positions as a unit. When it cleared, though, they all felt more at ease when Iruka emerged. Iruka pulled out a big pocket watch and examined it, saying, "Hey, been a while, hasn't it? Made it, with a few hours to spare." Naruto relaxed and knelt down to pat Cassie, asking, "What are you doing here?" Without even glancing at Naruto, he turned to face Sasuke and Sakura and said, "Well, I was allowed to meet you and congratulate you on passing the second test. I wanted to make sure that you made it out okay and ready to move on to the third test." He waved his hand in front of Naruto, who merely gave him a glare. I am also here to explain the quote here on the wall. This is the motto of the Chunin. If you lack heaven, seek wisdom, be prepared. Means that if you lack intelligence, study, and be ready. He gestured to Sakura before turning to face Sasuke. If you lack earth, run in the fields, seek advantages. Means if you lack strength, train hard and watch for opportunities. If you have both heaven and earth, you can prevail under any circumstances. When Sakura said, but what about the last line? The word, person, is what goes in the blank. These rules will guide a person's extremes, he clarified. And that is the motto of the Chunin. It is something that you must always remember if you are to take the next step to being a ninja. All of them turned to face Naruto and said, "You're wrong." Naruto approached the poster on the wall and gazed up at it, saying, "There is no next step to being a ninja, we are already there." He turned to face his teammates, his former teacher, and his new friend, all of whom were watching him. "I don't see this as a motto. I see this as a warning and a promise. The greater we become, the greater obstacles we will face, both intellectually and physically. To overcome those problems we will have to grow and change, becoming comfortable with ourselves and our environment. And we will do it, and we will become greater than ever before." Perhaps, Iruka thought, he does understand. Perhaps I've miscalculated him if he realizes that. Naruto, they all said, keeping an eye on Iruka. He waited for Naruto's replay while the boy glanced at his teammates and his fox friend. "Do you think you are ready for the next challenge?" he asked. When he said, "We're all ready, I am confident that we will overcome all challenges." "Maybe you are ready," Iruka said, gesturing for them to follow him as he made his way to the door. They followed him through the door and into the next room where the other teams had assembled. There are a few other teams that have already gotten here. You will all be meeting to talk about the final test in the main room. I suggest that you take this time to rest up. For a brief moment, Naruto sat down by the little fox and hung back with Cassie. "Stay close to me, do what I tell you, and above all, don't cause any trouble." Cassie gave a nod. Grinning, Naruto followed the fox into the next room. He entered the building and surveyed the other teams present. Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji, that's Team 10. Kiba, Hinata, Shino or Team 8. So, all the rookies passed along with 2 other Leaf teams. Sakura said, "That sound team made it somehow," as she approached him. Naruto, though, wasn't paying attention. He had met the gaze of a boy on the other side of the room. Sasuke said, "The sand team," as he saw where Naruto was focusing. Once more, however, Naruto was not even paying attention. Naruto's intense gaze on the red-haired sand nin caught Sasuke's attention. "What is it, Naruto?" Naruto gave a slight shake of his head. He uttered, "I don't know." Cassie yipped something next to him. "But something about him isn't right, it doesn't feel right." If it was any indication, Naruto only reached down and gave the fox a very much appreciated scratch between the ears. Sasuke gave the fox a disgusted glance, but he remained silent and remained where Sakura was. When the other teams in their grade saw them, they went over. The first team to arrive was Team 10. More precisely, Ino was the first to arrive, hurling herself at Sasuke, with Shikamaru and Choji trailing behind. As Sakura hurried to defend her Sasuke from Ino Pig, she instantly forgot about Naruto and the fox. "So," said Shikamaru. Choji nodded while munching on a bag of chips he had acquired from somewhere. Another team made it here intact. This is going to make the next test troublesome. Then Team 8 crossed, Kiba and his dog ahead, Shino right behind him, and the bashful Hinata slightly behind them. The fox and dog eyed one another slowly, but neither of them acted aggressively. Kiba inquired, "Where did the fox come from?" When Kiba asked himself, "Has the dead last started picking up strays?" He laughed aloud. The others observed the fox for a while, pointing out how it differed from other foxes. Grinning, Naruto reached down to stroke the fox's neck. Although they were unaware of what had transpired, the others weren't as repulsed by the fox as Naruto's teammates were. Naruto said, "I'll make you eat those words," and he laughed a little. Similar arguments had occurred during their time together in school, but they were never resolved. Kiba said, "Whenever you're ready," and knelt down to give Akamaru a back pat. Cassie quickly turned his head as his ears perked up. Naruto and several others also turned to gaze. From the other side of the room, they could see Gaara from the sand team glaring at them. The sight of Gaara observing them made Kiba shudder. Hinata hid behind as many people as she could to avoid the frightening red-haired boy, while Shino remained silent despite her agitation. They were the first ones here. "Just a warning," Kiba stated. He shook his head and shuddered as Akamaru let out a little whimper. "That guy is a freak. I saw him crush a man with sand without a moment's hesitation, and then the man's teammates. I've never seen anything like it before. Wait, Naruto cut in. Kiba simply nodded in response to the question, you saw Idzand, he killed a man with sand? Naruto nodded. They had seen the 3 cadavers in the forest. Yay, he covered them, there was blood everywhere. It was a mess. However, Naruto began to laugh a little and smile. The others gave him a disbelieving look. That guy is one of the strongest people in this room if I am right about who he is. And I can tell you right now that if I am right, then there are only 1 or maybe 2 people here who have a chance against him. Ino said, he doesn't look that tough, but she wasn't entirely convinced. She then turned Naruto on. Everyone turned to watch Naruto, anticipating a response to the question, besides, who do you think he is and how would you know how powerful he is? Naruto reached the center of his shirt and rubbed the area where his first brother's missing symbol was located. The first of 9, and I believe he is my missing brother, he said. His teammates were reminded of what had transpired in Wave by his remark. I would rather face Zabuza than one of Naruto's siblings, recalled Sasuke, Kakashi said. He turned back to face Gaara, who had turned away from them. Could he be Naruto's siblings, after all? Sakura inquired, how do you know Naruto? If you've never seen him before, how can you know he is one of them? Naruto was indeed observing Gaara, grinning broadly. The sand, and a few other things now that I look at him carefully, he said. He turned back to the others and said, one of his skills was control over sand. I'll need to speak with him sometime soon. I am going to give you a very, very serious warning. If you face him, for whatever reason, just back off. He is far stronger than you right now, and might even go so far as killing you. Question. Shikamaru raised his voice. His teammates nodded in agreement, and Sakura and Sasuke turned to Naruto for answers, but Naruto did not respond. What the hell are you talking about? You think he's your brother? Since when do you have any relatives? And how do you know so much about him? And besides, why are you, of all people, so sure we can't beat him? I don't care how Naruto knows about him, but he's right, Kiba replied. We've seen his power, or at least a little of it. Without thinking, he blocked an attack that would kill any of us, and with ease he killed 3 people, crushing them with the sheer force of his sand. If you don't trust Naruto, then trust me, and get away from him if something happens. And if you have to fight him, just give up, that's what I will do if it happens to me. At this moment, a huge puff of smoke erupted from the room's head beneath a sizable pair of stone hands that were engraved with the tiger's sign. All of the Junin teachers, examiners, and others were visible once the smoke had cleared. The Hokage, wearing his office robes, was one of them. Ibiki yelled, all right you brats, back. He gestured to the space in front of the gathered Junin and said, form up into your teams right here. Every team rushed to obey the black-clad Junin's orders. He moved aside to allow the Hokage to advance once they were all gathered. The Hokage took a drag from his long pipe before continuing, saying, congratulations, to all of you, for making it this far. For many of you this is your first time taking the Chunin exam. So among other things, I will explain to you what the reason is behind the exam and the competitive tests. He grinned at the perplexed expressions on some of their faces and said, the first test was to measure your capacity to bend the rules without breaking them. As the genin processed what he had told them, he took another puff on his pipe. A ninja must be able to know when and where to bend the rules to get a mission done. The second test was to see your teamwork in under real mission parameters, especially when you might encounter other ninjas. But there are other reasons as well. This competition is to further improve the friendship between the countries each of you represent. You have also heard that it is to raise the level of the shinobi involved. But there is another reason, and this final reason is probably the most important. This contest is a replacement for the great wars that were once waged between the shinobi nations. Instead of wasteful wars, we now hold these competitions where the lords can watch and see the strength of the countries that entered. Nations with strong ninja will get more clients, and nations that show weakness will lose clients. Kiba grumbled, then why put us through those other tests? No one was watching them. He was interrupted by another ninja who appeared slightly in front of him. The strength of a country is the strength of the shinobi of that country. And since the true strength of a shinobi only comes out in life or death battles, the final test for the lords will be. The ninja was kneeling, but they could tell he was a Junin based on his vest. Coughing deeply, the Junin said, sorry to interrupt you, but as the referee for the third test I ask that you allow me to continue this. The Hokage gave him a small nod, but his face remained solemn. Of course, he said. The genin teams became the new Junin's focus. He had bags under his eyes, coughed frequently, and appeared extremely ill. He was also pale and trembling a little. He coughed into his hand and said, I am Gecko Hayate, which made the genin question whether he should be a ninja or on active duty. I will be the referee for the preliminaries of the third test. Preliminaries, asked Sakura aloud. Why would there be preliminaries to an exam? He coughed for a long time, and several of the general public thought he might be having a seizure. It seems that the first and second tests were too easy this year. There are too many people for the third test to take place in an orderly amount of time. So we have to trim down the numbers by having preliminaries. The Sand Team girls said, Yuha, how are we supposed to trim down the numbers? From here on out each person will be competing individually in one-on-one fights. Hayate was coughing. Everyone looked around, wondering if anyone would withdraw. This means that if you want to withdraw from competition, this is your chance, but you will no longer have the chance to become a chunin in this exam. Dropping out will not penalize your team in any way. One hand came up. Kabuto, who had shown them the information cards prior to the first test, said, I wish to withdraw. Naruto and several others scowled. Aside from being slightly bruised, he appeared to be in good health. I've exhausted my chakra and wouldn't be able to fight anyone effectively. Naruto thought that explanation was completely out of line, so he silently turned on his demon eyes to the first level and turned to face Kabuto. The colors did indeed reveal that he was lying. Naruto wished he could question Kyuubi about a few other colors that he didn't associate together. Naruto saw Hinata, who was sitting in the round next to him, staring at him strangely as the referee crossed him off the list of competitors. Her confidence vanished as soon as he looked at her, and a deep pink flush appeared. He soon discovered that his demon eyes were still open. He cursed himself. He must not be able to conceal the demon eyes in first level without Kyuubi's assistance. His teammates got into a heated argument without him having a chance to speculate about the meaning of the deep pink. Sakura was advising Sasuke to pull back. Sasuke was massaging the mark with his fingers in an attempt to relieve the pain, but he quickly withdrew his hand when he noticed his teammates observing. That thing on your neck, it's bad, it needs to be taken care of. Sakura appeared to be about to cry as she said, it's hurting you. Please, I want you to pull out of this fight. I'm afraid. She began to raise her hand, but Sasuke grabbed her wrist and stopped her, saying, if you don't withdraw then I'll tell them about the mark. He whispered, be quiet, to her. Sakura's feelings were openly dismissed, shocking even Naruto. I am alright. We've had our rest, I will be fine. And just stay out of my business. As a teammate as well as a friend, she had good reason to be concerned. Naruto noticed that the Junin teachers behind the Hokage were speaking quietly to one another when he looked up at them. He guessed what they were discussing after catching a few looks at Sasuke. Sakura, murmured Naruto. Sakura looked at him and then back at Sasuke, who was still concerned, and said, I think it will be alright. He hoped, but did not express it, that Kakashi won't let anything happen to us. Sakura glanced up at Kakashi on the stage, past them. She bit her lip as she considered the situation. Even though she didn't trust Naruto, she did trust Kakashi, and Naruto was correct. She nodded, and she made no attempt to raise her hand when Sasuke released it. She inhaled deeply before turning to face Naruto, and Sasuke followed suit. What? Asked Naruto, momentarily perplexed. He looked around at some of the other teams and said, oh hell no, there is no way I'm backing out of this thing. His eyes were fixed on Gaara. I have unfinished business, he said. Sasuke said, yay, but he was staring at Naruto. Naruto smiled despite being taken aback by the declaration, I want to fight you. At that moment, they were reminded to look at the referee. I can't wait. He coughed lightly and asked, if that is going to be everyone? He gestured to a screen set into the wall behind him and said, then we have a total of 20 people. The 10 matches will be randomly selected by computer and displayed up on that screen. He glanced up at the screen and said, we will begin the first match right away. When he indicated the stairs, everyone started to move in that direction. Uchiha Sasuke and Akado Yoroi remain here. Everyone else will please go to the upper levels and wait until your fight is called. Reaching up, Naruto gave Sasuke a shoulder pat. He smiled and said, don't lose too early. Sakura gave a nod and trailed behind Naruto, saying, I'll be waiting for you up there. The instructors of the teams that made it remained on stage after the Hokage and the majority of the Junin vanished. Everyone ascended to the top floor. Naruto heard Kakashi whispering to Sasuke, but he didn't see it. Don't use your Sharingan, Kakashi said, his tone less composed than usual but still at ease. Taking Sasuke's grunt as an indication that he accepted his terms, he went on up the stairs, saying, if that curse on your neck becomes active, you might die. If that happens I'm going to stop the fight. It was a relief to Naruto. Although he wasn't certain that Kakashi would break up the fight, his suspicions were validated by Kakashi's words. He ascended the stairs and entered the upper balcony without concern. He watched the start of the fight while standing and leaning against the balcony railing. Through the bars of the railing near Naruto's feet, Cassie watched the battle while wrapping his tail around Naruto's ankles. When Naruto appeared, Sakura kept Kakashi between them by standing a short distance away. With their teacher typically standing directly behind them, the other teams stayed together. When the referee initiated the fight, everyone was watching closely. Sasuke's opponent, Akado Yoroi, began by focusing chakra into his right hand and performing a hand seal. With his right hand burning with chakra, he used his other hand to launch multiple shuriken at Sasuke. The shuriken were blocked by Sasuke, who pulled out a kunai and struck them so hard that they flew back at Yoroi. However, Naruto could tell that something was amiss because Sasuke winced in agony and nearly collapsed. He barely avoided his opponent's next attack by remaining upright. After dodging his shuriken, Yoroi was able to move behind Sasuke and attempt a forceful blow with his glowing right hand. After he was able to leap out of the way, Sasuke attempted to grapple with Yoroi and used a complicated hold against his left arm to bring him down. Despite his desire to try the first level of his demonic eyes, Naruto was unable to conceal the effects of the first level without Kyuubi's assistance. In order to see how strong Sasuke was against an unidentified opponent, he sat down cross-legged and watched through the bars. Cassie was moving and lying down, resting his head in Naruto's lap as they both watched the fight. It didn't seem like a very strong response. Sasuke was about to finish the hold that would have ended the fight when Yoroi was able to seize him with his right hand. As he observed, Naruto scowled. There was a problem with this battle. He reasoned that Sasuke shouldn't be experiencing this much difficulty. When Naruto looked up at Kakashi, he noticed that he was observing the battle. Naruto also turned around and observed the battle. Sasuke's grip on Yoroi had been broken, and Yoroi had taken Sasuke by the head. "What is going on?" Naruto asked, addressing no one specifically. "He's rested, there wasn't any trouble. He should have much more energy." He observed Sasuke eluding his opponent once and positioned himself some distance away. "I see how it is," Sasuke, struggling to catch his breath, said. He staggered into a ready positing and said, "Somehow you're drawing out my chakra." He attempted to come up with a strategy to counteract the technique's stamina depleting effects. But before he could think, his opponent launched a swift attack with his glowing hand, forcing Sasuke to retreat. Only a few more prolonged grabs would be enough to drain his energy completely. Naruto observed a few things while Sasuke was engaged in combat. Yoroi used his right hand for more attacks than his other hand or feet. Additionally, there were disadvantages even though it seemed like a good idea with a demanding skill. Sasuke might be able to attack Yoroi once before he could react if he could break through his hand. He only needed one strong attack against Sasuke. After observing a brief shift in Sasuke's expression, Naruto grew more resolute. "He's got it," concluded Naruto. Sakura glanced at Naruto, unsure of what he meant, and then glanced back at the battle. Sasuke's going to win. Although he was unaware of it, a few other people, mostly teachers, also glanced at him, but their attention was quickly diverted as they watched the fight and wondered if Naruto saw the same thing. Then it arrived out of nowhere. A few people were able to identify the unexpected attack that Sasuke carried out as not being his own. At the last second, Sasuke kicked directly into Yoroi's jaw, sending him flying into the air after attacking with a backslide. After lowering himself, Sasuke pushed off, trailing behind the stunned Yoroi. He emerged slightly behind the nin, smiling at the prospect of victory. Regretfully, the cursed seal began to spread and activate on his neck at that precise moment. Drops of black, curling tears began to appear on his skin, extending from the middle of his neck. Those who witnessed it were taken aback. Those who were aware of it prepared to break up the fight. Those who were unaware of its nature merely gazed in wonder. As Naruto observed, he was disgusted by the tainted chakra that Sasuke was emitting. Recognizing the sensation as malevolent, Cassie squatted and snarled, desiring no part of it. After giving the little fox a quick glance, Kakashi made the decision to learn as much as he could about what had transpired in the forest. He turned to face Sasuke and was ready to leap in when the marks on his skin ceased to move. Sasuke's expression changed to one of pain and perhaps rage. The thought of this mark on his body controlling him did not sit well with him. He clenched his jaw and focused. A moment later, his eyes opened and the mark ceased to move. It turned around and went back to where it had been. He attacked his opponent with his mind free once more. His mental battle had depleted his valuable reserves. leaving him with only one more attack option. He whirled around and attempted to kick Yoroi in the side, but was stopped. He quickly changed course and struck Yoroi in the face with a forceful backhand. Sasuke continued to attack as they began to fall, punching Yoroi in the stomach before making one last spin. Sasuke kicked his opponent in the stomach as he hit the ground, increasing the damage one final time as they landed. Sasuke had also been injured in the last impact and had been knocked away from Yoroi. The examiner approached Sasuke and knelt beside him as he attempted to stand up. As Sasuke wiped blood from his cheek, he got to his feet and grinned slightly. With the words, "Winner, Uchiha Sasuke," the first match was concluded. Sasuke felt lightheaded for a second as he relaxed and began to back away, but Kakashi caught him. Medic Ninja entered the room to examine the two competitors, assess whether either required medical attention, and, if so, remove them from the battle area. Naruto saw Kakashi wave the medic away and head out with Sasuke, but he didn't hear what he said. Despite Sasuke's apparent displeasure, Kakashi gave him no say in the matter. Naruto moved toward the wall and turned away from the balcony's edge. He took a seat and relaxed. With his head resting in Naruto's lap, the fox approached and lay down beside him. Naruto closed his eyes and scratched his head. The fox's ears perked up slightly when it heard Cassie, but otherwise it remained motionless. "When it's my turn, or when it's Gaara's battle." Cassie yipped, signaling that he would wake up. Naruto took a seat, relaxed, and lost himself in his thoughts. Naruto noticed the difference right away. Kyuubi seemed to have vanished. Naruto took a few moments to realize what he was staring at. A huge stone wall stood in its place, but there was no cage. Naruto approached the wall and pressed his hand to it. It didn't feel natural at all, and it felt wrong. So, he reasoned. Naruto pondered the wall and paced in front of it, saying, "That is what that freak did. He completely blocked off my connection to Kyuubi, but how did he do it?" He closed his eyes and opened his mind, attempting to will the wall away, saying, "Well, this is my mind. I can do what I want here." The wall was still there when he opened his eyes. Okay, different tactic. With the force of his thoughts, weapons materialized in the air and launched themselves at the barrier. Without even scratching the wall, each and every one of them bounced off. He persisted for some time, experimenting with different approaches and concepts in an attempt to break the seal. Back in the real world, he was thinking, "Crap, it looks like I can't break through it from here. I'll have to do it from out there, but I don't even know how he did it. How the hell am I supposed to undo it?" But then something began to gnaw at his hand.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.